Yeah.
All right, hello, welcome. What's up? This is the movie discussion pocket dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, that's Jay, and we are back on our usual Tuesday evenings time slot. This week we're sort of, in a way, doing a return to some familiar ground, in that this movie, My Own Private Idaho, that we're doing for this week, has some direct ties to some films we've already done. Most notably, it's directed and written by Gus Van Sant, who we've already done his previous film on this show. If you haven't seen it, you can look it up on the channel, and that's Drugstore Cowboy. And like Drugstore Cowboy, this film is also set in the Pacific Northwest, mostly, although it moves around, and it's sort of about young people living outside the law, so it has some parallels there. And also, we've noted that we've done a few films that just happen to have that setting for whatever reason, the Pacific Northwest. We also did Singles, set primarily around Seattle in the early 90s. And we also did River's Edge, which, not to mention being Pacific Northwest, but also has a young Keanu Reeves. And this movie has a young Keanu Reeves, albeit a few years later.
Was Drugstore Cowboy in Portland?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so he must like doing stuff around that area.
Yeah.
But this film, I'm glad we chose this, because this is one of the films that made me want to start this series with you, because
Not really.
I'm a big fan of Gus Van Sant, and this is something I can never pull off over on the Sausage Factory. So I'm glad we're doing it here today.
Yeah, it's definitely a film I needed to see again, because I can't even, like, usually I have a pretty good memory of around the time. I can't pinpoint when I saw this film. I just know it's been quite a few years and that I had seen it. And you would think I would know it better, because if you'd watched The Sausage Factory, people know that I have kind of a preoccupation / crush on River Phoenix. So you think I'd be very familiar with all his works. And this is perhaps the role he's most known for.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's the one that most people sort of know him for and talk about.
Yeah, that's probably
he would die 2 years later.
Why this film is as popular as it is because of him. And
yeah, it certainly gave it some cult status.
His untimely passing away.
But like I said, I definitely need to see it again, because I couldn't even really remember what I thought about it. I knew that I thought it was a pretty good film, and I knew that I like River Phoenix, and this is a good play. But I couldn't really remember anything else. I couldn't remember. I knew the whole story. I remembered all the beats of the story, but I couldn't remember any of the intricacies, any of the things, how anything made me feel or how anything really looked or anything like that. So I really did need to see it again. So it was definitely good to give it another viewing, and give it some thought and analysis. This film came out in '91. It was Van Sant's follow-up to Drugstore Cowboy. The success of the former is basically why he was able to do this film. As you can imagine, this was not exactly a script that was going to get a lot of attention from studios and stuff, considering how offbeat the subject matter was. And even after that, I think some people were sort of reluctant about it. This was a story that he first started working on way back in the 70s when he was quite young. At least the general story about street hustlers, young men. And he was inspired.
Male prostitutes.
There you go.
I don't like the term hustler. It's too generic. You could be selling drugs and be called a hustler.
That's true. And that is I haven't read it, but that kind of is one of the plot points of the novel that he was inspired by. So it was this novel from 1963 called City of Night. And the whole point was they called themselves hustlers because they specifically didn't want people to call them prostitutes or call them gay.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted, which is certainly would make sense now. It makes even more sense then. So anyway, so I've read, and it says so in the Wikipedia article too, that basically he felt like he couldn't do anything that was as good as the book, and sort of shelved the project for a long time throughout the rest of the 70s and into the 80s, because he felt like the book was better than anything he could come up with anyway. And then I guess it took some of the success that he'd have, that first movie, Malinoche, which I still haven't seen it. But it was during that time where he met some street kids, and I think it reminded him of the story. And I think that's one thing that comes through in this movie early quite well, is that I think it's pretty authentic. You get the feeling that because sometimes you don't have to be authentic, but you can just write about stuff if you hear enough. You don't have to know everything. The whole thing, write what you know. I mean, a lot of people will say that's a little bit overrated. You don't have to necessarily be right into it. But I do believe the claims that Van Sant had spoken to various street kids in the area about their lives and experiences. It does seem to come across in this movie. I mean, there's parts where the camera just goes to them and lets them talk. And I assume that those are basically approximations of real stories that he actually heard, right? At least that's the impression I got from it. So that's kind of cool. It lends some authenticity to it.
Yeah, it's a subject matter that Gus Van Sant tends to have in his films, at least not his mainstream films. They're, the homosexual nature of things. It's a reoccurring thing in most of his films. And I believe he is a gay man, so
yeah,
maybe
makes sense.
Is like a write what you know type thing. Something.
Yeah. But which is much to the film's benefit, because one of the things I like about, how they treat sort of the angle of homosexuality in this is like they don't really treat it like an angle at all. It's just there. And I mean, there's plenty of films about homosexual characters, and they're struggling to come to terms with that, or with them themselves, and reconciling it to their family and other people's, but all the normal things apply. Perhaps a family that wouldn't be acceptable of it, a society that is certainly less acceptable, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, all that is very poignant, and all that is very relevant and true, but not every story needs to be told that way. And I'm glad that this one more or less just sidesteps that stuff. Yeah, the movie is a sort of a journey of self-discovery in that, but it's not about coming to terms with the fact that he's a gay man. He's at peace with that. And that's almost kind of just a bit refreshing to see. Again, I don't have anything against those films where you have the characters that have to do that. I just feel like there's kind of enough of them. And it's good, and it's nice to have a film where you have a gay character where their struggle isn't all based around just that.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's not the main subject matter either. It's not the focus of the film. It just happens to be the case.
Right. I mean, yeah, you could take the characters and perhaps even make them straight and just tweak things a little bit, and you would still have a very similar story, I think.
Well, sure. I mean, the whole premise of the street hustlers, the male prostitutes, is they're gay for pay. I mean, at least in Keanu Reeves' eyes.
Right. Yeah. And that's true. Right. It shines a light on that there's sort of a mix. There's a mix in there. Yes. There's like maybe some truly gay guys in there, but then there's some other guys that are just sort of gay by necessity, we'll say, gay for pay, as you said, and then somebody like Keanu Reeves that is almost like a tourist.
Yeah, which brings up some questions
maybe
psychologically, but yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think some things he needs to examine about himself, because I mean, I don't know, it seems like an odd profession to choose when you do have a rich father. That
yeah, very much so.
You may not go into that unless you wanted to experience it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind it, but it does lead me to wonder, like, why he's so accepted among them.
That is,
because because a lot of them are living a really tough life that they mostly don't have much of a choice in. It's, these are their options, and that's what they have to do. And everybody in his circle knows him and knows who he is, and they don't seem to resent the fact that he's sort of just treating it like being a tourist, because there's a very big difference in, we'll bring it up now since it ties in. Some people I'm sure know, or whether just through their own reading or reading about the play, that there's some parallels between this and some Shakespeare work, most notably the historical plays, King Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, and a little bit of King Henry V. And most of that is based on Keanu Reeves' character, him having a parallel in the character Prince Harry. Or is it Prince Henry? I can't remember, but Prince Harry, I think, who's called Hal in that. And the parallel there is that he's a prince. He's in line to be king, but what he chooses to do is he slums it up. He goes and hangs out with, like, the lowest rung of society. He's hanging out with thieves and robbers and drunkards and poor people and stuff, and they're all led by a disgraced knight, Falstaff, and who's a very enduring and popular character in Shakespeare. And that's who the Bob character is based on in this. But anyway, the difference is, though, you can totally understand why, in that sense, they would all like him. They're all like, oh, we're at the bottom society. This is hundreds of years ago, where class matters even more, of course. And he's a prince, but he chooses to hang out with us and be one of us. And that's cool. But I don't know. it doesn't seem to fit the same way here when you have people that have to prostitute themselves and kind of do things that are kind of degrading and stuff, and they realize that this guy's sort of just going through it for kicks. I don't know, but they're all fine with it. Everybody knows who he is. Like, it's not like it's a secret or anything. They all know full well who he is, and they all like him fine, and it's fine by them that even though he doesn't need the money, there he is sort of cutting in on their action.
You know, he's been there for, I think it says at one point, like 3 years or over 3 years. So,
yeah, so since he was about 17.
Maybe he's proven himself.
Because he's supposed to be turning 21.
You know,
and that's true too. Some of these questions that come up could be answered and be like, yes, maybe earlier on they did have those issues and they're past that, and so you know, that's a fair enough point. So I won't call it like a hole in the story because you can explain it that way. Oh, you know, pretty satisfactorily.
And Falstaff, you know, or Bob, you know, he's like his favorite. Scott's like one of his favorite kids. So
sure,
it probably doesn't hurt.
Right, and he pulls a lot of weight, of course, because he's sort of. But I mean, I don't know how deliberate that it is because of the Shakespeare stuff, but it also drew some parallels to other stuff too. Like, it's very obviously these characters it gives the whole movie a very bohemian flavor. So if you're familiar with, say, either the movie version or just the stage musical, like Rent, they remind me a lot of characters in Rent, in that it. In both cases, you have characters that are basically poor and they're sort of on the outside, the fringes of society, and they're sort of ostracized. But they live a tough life, but at the same time, they take a certain sort of pride in it. And there is a certain element of fun. And you know, there's at least one or two songs in Rent sort of dedicated to that. Like, I think one of them is like La Vie Bohème, where they sing about how great it is to live the bohemian life or something like that. And that comes across a little bit in some of these scenes too. It's like, yeah, like they're poor. You know, they have to prostitute themselves, and it's obviously a very tough life, but they also sort of take a certain amount of joy and pride in it too, like that they're not like the norm. They're not regular society. They're sort of surviving on the fringe of societies as like weird outsiders, and I think they both have that flavor to them. And even it's somewhat like Dickensian, I guess you can compare them. Like him being the center of this group of young hustlers, shall we call, is kind of like the characters that Oliver Twist falls into, that group of like pickpockets in Oliver, and they're all led by a guy, and the Artful Dodger and stuff. So some similarities there too, for sure, which I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. I will say this is a much better modern Shakespearean, you know, adaptation than something like Romeo and Juliet.
The 96 one?
Did you ever see that? Baz Luhrmann, I believe, directed that one.
Yeah, I like that fine. I mean,
oh, you like it? Okay.
I mean, well, it's not a parallel. It is what it is. It is telling the story. It gives it a new thing, but you know, the lines are the same, the characters are the same.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I like it fine. I think I actually have the DVD. I always thought it was okay.
Oh man, I remember like that, and like My So-Called Life. Like you could always find the girl, the like goth girl that was like into that stuff.
Yeah, and I kind of was at the time, pretty much. I really liked My So-Called Life, and yeah, that's like the main reason why I liked Claire Danes. She was in both. I loved Claire Danes from Romeo and Juliet.
Oh yeah, I didn't put that together. She was in both.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, that movie I was about 13 when that movie came out, so, and you know, it was aimed squarely around my demographic, particularly the girls, with Leo back in his heartthrob days. Some people say he's never really left them, but no, I liked that movie fine. It's not like it was amazing or daring just because they put a modern spin on it, but it's not a parallel. It was an adaptation. But this is a little more creative, I suppose you could say, because it's a different story with different characters, but just using some parallels. So this is more creative because it has its own original characters. Although some of the similarities, like I said, when I first saw the movie, I don't know. I'm not sure of the timeline of how long ago it was I saw the movie, but it must have been either really long ago or not long ago enough, because I did actually formally study this play maybe 15, 16 years ago. And so if I'd seen the movie around then, it would have been very clear and obvious to me. So obviously I didn't. But yeah, but there's about 3 scenes in particular in this film that are more or less the exact same thing, just, you know, with the different setting and different characters, as we'll get into. And that certainly didn't register with me the first time. So I guess it was either before I'd studied the play or too long after for me to remember or something like that. Because you have a few different speeches and things that basically mirror exactly what's going on in the in Henry IV Part 1.
But I guess we can get into the main through plot line. Is it follows Mike, and Mike is a narcoleptic who is he's trying to find himself, and he's trying to find his mother, really, because
right.
I don't know if you notice, a lot of his narcoleptic fits were pretty much tied to memories of his mother, or quite a few were.
Right. The memories being presented like old home movies.
Right. Like when he had the sexual encounter with the female, the older lady that had hired him.
Yeah. And he goes out.
Then, and I guess like she reminded him of his mother, and then he passed
I figured that's what it was.
But
I wasn't gonna ask you this early, but considering that, so that's River Phoenix's character Mike, and what's funny is that we've talked about how just now how a lot of this movie parallels stuff from that work by Shakespeare. Mike is not part of that. Mm-hmm. That's something that's going on besides him. It's more centered on Scott, I think, Keanu Reeves' character. So that's something I think that makes it interesting right off the bat, because that's there, but it's not the main story. The main story is Mike, who is completely original and outside of that. So there's a few different things going on in the movie, and I was going to ask you eventually, but might as well ask you now. Did you think the fact that he was narcoleptic is even really needed? I felt like it was something that was kind of, the movie didn't even need it. I don't think it hurts the movie. I just felt like we already had things going on in the movie, and this seemed like another extra thing, and I didn't feel like it really brought that much to it. Although it is true, like as you said, that it seemed that like usually the narcolepsy is triggered by some sort of stress or something that is related to memories of his childhood and his mother. So, I mean, that's fair enough. But part of me just feels like you didn't even need the narcoleptic stuff.
I agree with that, but you know, it's almost like he's sleeping through his life, kind of. He's kind of just bouncing around, just, you know, asleep for most of it.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I remember reading something about that, and I guess that didn't come across as strongly to me as I thought it would when I finally did see it, I guess. Because, there's a thing about, like, how narcoleptics in general, they come across as somewhat dreamy and detached to people who don't understand them, because the whole idea is, well, the fact is sometimes they miss out on very important moments in their lives because they have no control over it. So it leads to a necessity of sort of having that kind of attitude, and that it's something that, people who don't understand the disorder just can't understand. So they just see these people as, for lack of a better term, flaky or something like that. And I remember reading some more stuff about that in anticipation of doing the watch. And I guess it does come across in the film, but I didn't feel like it was that important.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree.
Like, I don't know. I felt like he seemed to have more serious character things going on. Like I said, it almost came across to me, just me, that it was more like it was a quirk than it was like some like really serious thing that affected his life, especially considering the way his friends handled it. They're like, oh, he does this sometimes. And they would just abandon him in places. Like, okay, we'll leave him here.
It's not a good trait for a street person to have.
Very dangerous, yeah.
I would think you would get robbed constantly, I would think, while you're asleep.
Absolutely.
Among other things.
Not to mention, not to make a bit of a generalization, when you have people that are in the habit of hiring prostitutes, a lot of these people aren't necessarily so trustworthy themselves. Can you just imagine falling asleep with a client? They'd be like, well, I paid my money, so I will just do what I do while you're asleep, and maybe a few things you didn't agree to, while I'm at it and stuff. So it just adds a whole awful level of danger to it.
One of the scenes, they're in a like a coffee shop type place, or some sort of diner, and it just pans around, and there's a few other young male prostitutes in there talking about some of their bad experiences.
Right.
Oh man, it's awful. One guy he got basically raped, and the guy shoved a wine bottle up his ass.
Yeah.
And gosh.
Yeah, and as they said, I figure some of that is probably stuff like Van Sant really heard for real from some of these characters, and
Absolutely.
thought, yeah, that would be a good thing to put in the movie to give some perspective on that, what some of these people go through. And I also liked how some of the actors delivered the lines, because like they didn't act all traumatized by it. Like, get the fact that they probably were at the time, but now they're, you know, they have to go back to being their cool, aloof street selves. They're like, yeah, so that was pretty bad. He's like, I didn't do anything for, what do you say? It's like, so I didn't like take any dates for like about a year after that or something like that. Like he's acting all cool and aloof about it now, although it was, you know, obviously a very horrible, traumatic thing. But you get the impression that that's kind of the attitude they have to have as long as they're in this. Like they can't act hung up on it or anything. They have to be like, oh, well, you know, shit happens.
Well, I almost wonder if maybe those are actual people. You know, maybe those aren't actors.
As far as I know, they are actors because okay. I read that like when he wasn't getting funding for it, and it was sort of a gamble on his part to send the stuff to the agents of River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves, was because at that time, before he'd made that decision, Van Sant had basically considered perhaps that he would just film it with like real people and not use actors at all, not just to make it real, but also because like he wouldn't have to pay as much or anything like that. So that was the idea he had. And what's funny is like when he showed the script to various studios, a lot of them were sort of put off by the Shakespeare stuff, and they were telling him to cut it down and get rid of it. And then it turned out that the foreign distributors loved it and thought it was great, and that they needed as much as possible and stuff. So there's kind of a weird balance there. So
that's the only way he was able to get away with it.
Yeah, that there's probably less than there was going to be, but there's also than he intended. But there's also way more than ever would have happened if not for that reaction.
I could totally understand that because it is odd, but it kind of gives it a little bit of a charm. I think
I think so too.
I really like it.
I like it too. It works out because, like I said, it takes something that's fairly, you know, serious and dark and depressing, but they give it sort of that air of almost unreality, like they are actors in a play all playing out. To people who haven't seen the movie, it's very hard for us to describe exactly what we mean, so I'd really recommend seeing the movie. But what we mean is often we'll have these scenes of dialogue where they don't in any way talk like, you know, normal people would talk, and they would often act like they're performing almost for each other, which is very reminiscent of Shakespeare plays if you've seen them, because whenever you read or see a Shakespeare play, it's never just a straight story being told. It's always in the back of it understood that it is a play. So which is why you'll have things like characters directly addressing the audience and stuff like that, and soliloquies and stuff that, again, things that people wouldn't do in real life. And so you have that carried over into this. And so if you didn't know anything about Shakespeare at all, or that this had some relation to it, I guess it would be sort of confusing. You'd be like, why are they talking like this? And when we say this, we don't mean this is updated language. They're not saying like old English stuff. There's no thous and these and stuff like that. It's very dramatic and full of flourishes and stuff. And they almost seem to be like performing for each other, where one will get up and start to sort of almost make a speech in front of the others, and the others will all sort of like watch and applaud and listen and or add their own things in, which in the real world is batshit crazy and is in no way natural. But I like you said, I think it has some charm to the movie, and it helps sort of soften somewhat the subject matter, because sometimes it's very kind of visceral and uncomfortable and upsetting. Sure. And yet we still have these characters that kind of almost think of themselves as lovable rogues, etc., which very much is tied into the characters in the Henry IV play that Hal hangs out with, Falstaff and all those guys. They're just like sort of a bunch of lovable rogues that like to, like, you know, get drunk and make fun of each other and all this stuff. And yeah.
Did you like the guy who had bells on his shoes and the Michael Jackson coat on, with all the zippers?
Yeah, the thriller joke, the thriller jacket guy towards the end. Yeah, old guy in a thriller jacket.
He was like, I have like 4 bottles of wine in a bush. We need to put together a ride to the bush and it'll be ours. Or he had an odd way of speaking too.
Right. So we're following Mike. And the film opens with him alone on a highway, sort of just with some meandering thoughts about sort of deja vu and stuff like that, saying something like, "Oh, he's he feels like he's been on this highway before or something like that, or maybe he's never gotten off it, or it goes on forever, blah, blah, blah. And the movie ends also pretty much the same stretch of highway. And some of the artistic flourishes in there that you see come up in his other films. But as someone who's seen like I haven't seen every film he's done, but I've seen like all his major films. I'd say this is the one that best exemplifies his style.
Sure.
I think if you're going to talk about like the way he uses, the camera and monologues and stuff like that, like you get a bit of that in lots of different of his movies. But I think this is the one that is like sort of the ultimate example, kind of. I think.
Sure.
It's funny too. Like it really I think back years ago when I saw Elephant, I wasn't even really thinking about how it was his film. But now when I think about Elephant, I think about how so many of like the way that the camera would be on people and the way they talk and stuff seems to come directly from this film.
Sure. Thinking back on Drugstore Cowboy, it had a lot of similar style of camera work.
Mm-hmm. It did, but I'd say like one of the major differences is that Drugstore Cowboy really seemed to have more of a foot in reality, whereas this one, because of the Shakespeare stuff, seemed to straddle the line a little bit. Like it was a real story about real people, but it also had this sort of stylistic storytelling element to it that made it feel unreal.
Sure.
Which I'm sure was a deliberate choice and something. This was the movie he did right after Drugstore Cowboy, and it had plenty of similarities to begin with. Again, centering on young people somewhat outside of the law and society in the Pacific Northwest at a certain time. So, you do what you can to create some differences there for sure. But it's again, it's a type of film where if you read about what it's about, I don't really know if it gives you actually a good idea of what it's like to experience the film. I mean, you could say that about anything, but I just mean because often, like, it's true. I mean, everything I've read is true. Like, you read and you'll say, well, this is sort of like what was it? Some of the words that they would use, something like how this was like a queer Western, queer Western road movie. Exactly. Thank you. That was the one I was looking for. And all that applies, but that's not the spirit I get out of the movie. Like, that's in there, but that's not how I would, if I was telling the movie to somebody, that's not what I would say.
Not at all.
But these are just like the labels that were, kind of like catchy, the things that made it stand out. So that's what people would talk about, and that would giving it its reputation, particularly at the time. This is 1991. You've got a scene where, it's not really explicitly shown, but still you see him receiving oral sex from another man, which in 1991 really would have been quite a unique thing to see. There would, if we're talking about like not including say foreign films, you're talking about like American films, Hollywood films, and stuff like that. I mean,
oh yeah,
what else was there even to see that would compare to that at the time? Maybe a few things, but not much. So
well, this was widely shown in theaters too, and I would think having River Phoenix in there, Keanu Reeves was not a known name yet, even though 91 he had Point Break and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey come out. So, and then the next year was Dracula. So
yeah,
he was
91 was sort of his star-making year in a way, I suppose.
So I would think that just having River Phoenix name in there is probably one of the reasons it even got released at all.
Sure. And as we said, it's sort of almost a risky role for somebody like River Phoenix. I think it's and he plays it so well. He's got this great sort of air of fragility and innocence, but also sort of kind of like come what may type, I don't know, roguish type charm to it too. Like really complex, I think.
It's really
like not a stereotype at all, which is like the best, maybe some of the best praise I can give it. Like he's not just some gay stereotype at all.
Sure.
He has the mannerisms and things that it's like, yeah, okay, I can see. Yeah, it seems like a gay person. Not to put gay people into one category, but you know how I mean when we're talking about things that might characterize a gay person. Like he has those, but not in such a way that it just seems like a ridiculous stereotype. Like he seems like, yes, okay, this is believable. He's a gay person, but that doesn't encompass his entire fucking personality, right? Like people often act like gay is a personality trait. and it's not. But anyway.
Well, I mean,
it certainly influences personality. Absolutely, I'm not saying that, but I just mean to like say somebody's gay, as if like that's their whole defining trait is like very limited way.
Defines you as a person. No, but
yeah, exactly.
No, River Phoenix, man, he did an amazing job in this film. It's his journey, his character's journey is just painful to watch. It's like he finally finds love. And then he watches Scott, basically, have sex with this woman in front of him, and and that's basically his, he just becomes unraveled at that point,
Which I think is another parallel to that novel I mentioned, which is sort of the same thing, where you have two young men and one who's in love with the other, and they go on this journey for whatever reason, and the other one falls in love with a woman right in front of the other guy and breaks his heart. I think that's in that novel too, so that's in there. So
the
very painful.
The one that he based on The Hustlers. You mentioned The Hustlers earlier.
Yeah, City of Night, this novel from 1963. I think that also happens in the book, where one of the men is in love with the other, but the other doesn't reciprocate and actually winds up with a woman. I think maybe even getting married or something like that. But yeah, I was just going to say, about the scripting and getting those two. It just says here, like in the Wikipedia, it says like he sent the script to Reeves's and Phoenix's agents, and he didn't think there was a chance that either of them would give him a chance. But actually, the truth was that Keanu Reeves's agent liked it, but Phoenix's agent wouldn't even show it to Phoenix himself. But then because he knew that Keanu Reeves actually personally knew River Phoenix, because they had some ties, some stuff they'd worked on together, and they knew some people in common and stuff like that. I think Martha Plimpton had worked with there you go. So they had some ties. So he got the idea. He said, well, if you want to do the movie, and I really think that River Phoenix should do the movie too, could you just bring, I can't get through his agent. How about you bring the script to him and myself? And Reeves went on like a long motorcycle trip from somewhere wherever he was in Canada all the way to Florida to meet him and show it to him. And I guess he liked it, and that's how it wound up working out.
I think I would fire that agent.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, assuming that he didn't die 2 years later, I mean, this is some, your career building stuff here, showing your range as an actor.
Right.
Really a good choice, I think, for both these guys to take.
Except it turns out, I guess, that Rivers at first thought he was getting the other role, and he was just like, actually, no, I gave that to Keanu. We want you to be Mike. And Rivers was, I guess, a little bit, not upset, but a little bit nervous about that. But of course, then, obviously, they knew what they were doing in casting them. I couldn't imagine reversing the roles. He's just so good as Mike. The
James Dean, as he's always referred to.
Right.
The heartthrob, he was on the cover of Tiger Beat every week or whatever.
Sure.
And he goes out and now he's playing a gay guy. I mean, it's a bold move, really smart move, I think. I mean, then I think a lot more than it would be now, I think now.
Oh yeah, now it's almost like sort of expected. Yeah. It's just like, oh, okay, well, you play some gay roles, that'd be good. Whereas back then, it's just like it was. I mean, I hate to use the word, but it was almost sort of toxic. There were people that, I mean, there still are, but not to the degree now. There were people where it was just that they did not want to see that in movies. Like they knew it existed in the real. They knew it existed in the real world, and they did not approve. And they were okay if they could ignore it. So they didn't need it, shoved in their face in movies and stuff like that. So there were probably some people that were just like, I do not want to see my actor play that. Right. It's like definitely a very sort of bold, risky thing to do. Full credit to him for doing it and carrying it off so well.
Yeah, I'm sure his agent probably said it was career suicide.
Yeah. What's funny is I don't know which role, but Kiefer Sutherland had apparently been offered the role too, and turned it down because he wanted to go skiing at the time. And he said he would come to regret that decision, which is pretty funny.
What year was Flatliners?
That's 91 too, isn't it?
Oh, that's...
Or maybe it's 90.
Not 2007. I mean, 2017.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a new Flatliners, and with Ellen Page and some other people in it. This isn't related or anything like that, but I was just thinking the last couple movies I went to see in theater, I saw the preview for Flatliners.
Oh, really?
And I don't know. It's like the first time maybe I can ever think of like sitting in the theater and watching a preview and being like disturbed by it. Like it really shook me up. The Flatliners preview.
Does it look okay?
Yeah, it looks okay. I never thought the first one was anything really that special, so I don't really care that it's being remade. I'm sure all these things have their own audience and have their own fans and stuff, so maybe there's probably people out there going, this doesn't need a remake, and I'm not saying it needs one. I'm just saying I don't really care because I didn't think the first one was so amazing anyway.
I don't either. I'm so opposed to the idea of doing a remake now because I don't think it's necessary. Like there's so much great screenplays out there that they just won't take a chance on it. This is the bullshit Hollywood studio system that just will not take a chance.
It's really going to have to collapse soon. We're running out of things to remake, so. But I can't say whether or not I know if it's going to be a worthy remake or a good movie. But like, I just found the preview disturbing, and I saw it twice, so it's not like it was just a one-time thing. I saw it twice, and I don't know, it just sort of it shook me up a little bit. To tell you the truth, it made me a little uncomfortable.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not a very big fan of the original one either, but I don't know. There's some decent stuff in there. I would say to anyone who hasn't seen the original Flatliners, definitely watch it one time.
It's worth seeing. What's funny is for years I used to get this. It makes no sense because but just for whatever reason I used to get Flatliners and Scanners mixed up. Like people would be talking about Flatliners, and I'd be like, oh yeah, and then I'd start talking about exploding heads, and they're like, what?
Oh yeah, and my sister was a big fan of that film, so we watched it quite a bit. And I see Keith Sutherland is also in the remakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's Keith Sutherland. But it's funny. I've only talked a few times to people about the original Flatliners, and I think they were all girls. Mm-hmm. It could just be a coincidence. Might be a coincidence.
I wonder why that appeals. Just curious.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to this film, as we say, it doesn't. One thing that I think works to its favor is it doesn't sort of follow any sort of traditional arc or anything. All we know is that he's living this life, and he's obviously a bit dissatisfied by it, as you might be. Although he's in some ways seems very contented with it too. But he's at least troubled by his memories of his childhood and the idea it would be nice to reconcile with his mother and have some sort of, I guess, stability, at least knowing that he comes from a family, because, Scott might be rejecting his family, but at least he knows who he is, where he comes from, and who it is. He might reject it, but it's there, and he's only rejecting it temporarily, as we say, which is another direct parallel to the whole thing, like we said about the slumming. So here's Mike's little. I couldn't find the exact Shakespeare one, but here's Scott after one of the pass outs by Mike. Scott's talking to him, then he just sort of seems to start talking to us, breaking the fourth wall. He says, when I turn 21, I don't want any more of this life. My mother and father will be surprised at the incredible change. It'll impress them more when such a fuck-up like me turns good than if I had been good son all along. All the past years I will think of as one big vacation. At least it wasn't as boring as schoolwork. All my bad behavior I'm going to throw away, and to pay my debt, I will change when everybody expects it the least. Which is the exact motivation of Prince Hal in Henry IV. It's the same thing. It's like he feels like he doesn't want to run away from the responsibility of being prince or king forever. He just feels like he can lower expectations by acting like this for a while, and then when he changes, it'll look so much more remarkable and make him seem like he's a lot stronger and better and stuff. So the same sort of reasoning and the same sort of motivation there. So and it has its own sort of Shakespearean feel to it, the way it's delivered.
They should have made a sequel where Scott dies of AIDS. Because he thinks he's just going to throw it all away, right?
Yeah. Everything pretty much works out for him the way he wanted it to.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I mean, he just shuns everyone. I don't know. I get it.
Yeah.
He seems so like genuine though, in his love for those people.
I know.
Mike, I mean, not Mike.
Right.
Is that his name?
Yeah, Mike too.
I keep forgetting
and Bob.
his damn name.
Even
yeah, Mike,
Bob.
Yeah.
But It is true that like we do know these people that like things just seem to work out for them, and he's one of those because not only does he have all these things going for him anyway, where he could just leave the life at any time and step into this role in high society where he's inheriting money. They say he's inheriting money when he turns 21 anyway. But if in case there was any sort of thing to like, you know, and there was any sort of litigation to go through or anything to all that up, I'm not saying it makes him happy, but his father does die towards the end of the movie, meaning there's no issue there. It is absolutely all his now. If there was ever, you know, any sort of thing like conditions on his inheritance, like a trust fund or anything like that, that's all gone now. It absolutely is him. You've got all these people that are ready and willing to open doors for him. Somebody's like, you ever think of a career in politics? Because, you know, it's obviously being like, you know, because I could make a few calls and blah, 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 because that's how things work out. But the thing that's most insulting is that you have Mike going on this sojourn to find his mother that turns up nothing. He goes along with him for the hell of it and winds up just meeting a girl and getting to fall in love with her.
Yeah, they go
just like as an added bonus.
They go all the way to Italy. What city is it?
Rome.
Rome. Okay, it is Rome. Okay.
Well, they're mostly they're outside Rome. They're in the countryside, really. But yeah, they do say Rome.
Yeah, he just happens to find the woman and falls in love with.
Yeah. So you're just like, oh, come on, like. Especially people that have been through those tribulations. But it's true. We know people where things like that just seem to fall into their laps.
Well, how did you feel about the campfire scene? That's like the big scene in this movie.
I don't feel like it's that really important. And I feel like maybe River Phoenix shouldn't have messed with it because what I've read is that it was originally a bit shorter, and the rest of the movie was written by Van Sant, and that Phoenix himself rewrote the scene and made it longer and added things. He wanted to make it more clear that he was in love with him and have him just come out and say it. I don't even know if he needed that. I'm not saying it ruins the movie or anything like that, but that wasn't in the original script, for him just confessing his love to him.
Well,
but he felt like it needed to be more clear.
It makes his character a lot more tragic.
Sure.
You know, in that there's no question there.
There's no question
that he is in love with him. He's like, I really want to kiss you right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
But I mean, not that it's all like bad or anything. Like I like what Scott says, because he says something that I think is something that a lot of people can relate to, where he's talking about sort of the gay for pay lifestyle they're doing, and how obviously he like this is never explicitly taken. This is the subtext I'm getting out of it. As we said, it probably is a good guess to at least guess that he's probably to some extent bisexual. Again, there's different levels of bisexuality because, you know, he wouldn't just throw himself into something that absolutely repulsed him for the hell of it. So obviously he probably has some attraction to men and stuff, but he said something like about how two guys can't fall in love, which isn't true, but is true as his case too, because not that I feel like I've always had the need to explain like bisexuality to people and stuff like that, but it is true that like there's different levels to it, right? Not everybody who's bisexual is on the emotional level. There's people out there that, you know, they're attracted to this sex or that. They're attracted to both sexes sexually and can have sex with them. And sometimes they're romantically linked to both, but not always. Sometimes it's like, yeah, they could do sexual things with whatever sex, but they actually aren't capable of having romantic feelings and stuff. And he says something that, you know, places him in that yeah, he's probably a bisexual man who, you know, is attracted to men, but doesn't actually seek any sort of emotional thing from that. And it's not that that's important, but it kind of shocks me that even 2017, there's people that don't seem to understand that exists. They just seem to think that bisexual is like some sort of free-for-all, and it not always is. They're probably, I think, if you're going to talk about the sexual groups, orientations, they're the worst represented in film. They're always represented as depraved and usually bad guys. Add another level to how bad this bad person is. Well, they sleep with both sexes. They'll fuck anybody. And they'll usually do it like with other people around too. How many times have you seen like a way to illustrate that this is a villain? Is that the villain is banging somebody while he's like giving orders to like his underlings or something like that? It happens all the time, and it usually comes down to the depraved bisexual. So I really feel for like bisexuals that like get to see like themselves or characters themselves in movies where it's always just like, oh, they're the bisexual. It's just like, yeah, they'll fuck anything, as if like, yeah, that's what it means. You know, they're attracted to men and women, so it just means they've, you know, no standards, you know, whatever, and they're horny all the time, and that's all that matters. Like, And to this day, it's still not really done too well, to tell you the truth. Like, you can even watch recent things. It's like, how do we give another level to this? Like, it's usually bad guy. And it's usually, well, and if it's a guy, it's like, well, how about he fucks guys too? And if it's a girl, how about she fucks girls too? Like, that's like their added layer to make them seem more villainous or something. And I don't know. I'm not going to call it offensive, but it's clumsy and kind of lame. But yeah, so I kind of like that Keanu Reeves actually his character gives a little bit of an explanation on that, like about where he falls in the spectrum of bisexuality, because it is a real thing. But anyway, not a huge deal, but it is something about the scene that I took away and did like. But when you ask me in the context of the movie, no, I don't think it's like the pivotal scene in the movie. I think there's other scenes that are more important and better done, and certainly more enjoyable.
Sure.
Probably the scenes I like the best are like the Shakespeare stuff. Like the whole robbery thing is really funny. And it is pretty much the same thing in King Henry IV. Hal and one of his friends go out with Falstaff to like rob these guys that they know are going to come by. And then they separate themselves from the group and rob them afterwards just so they can come back and listen to their explanation of how the robbery goes, because they know Falstaff's just going to tell a bunch of lies. It's the same thing here. They rob the musicians, then they rob them as different people, and then when they go back to their hideout or the abandoned apartment complex where they all congregate, they get to wind Bob up and listen to him explain like how they got in turn robbed and how he keeps changing the number of assailants and stuff like that, and he keeps changing details, and the whole time they're just laughing at him and making little asides and stuff. Very Shakespearean there, and I really enjoy that. It's funny.
Yeah, it was like up to 16 at one point or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Bob's like, 2 of them. And he's like, then 3 stabbed me in the back. He's like, they were in green. And he's like, it's so dark you couldn't even see your hand. He's like, if it was so dark, how could you tell it was green and all this stuff? And he's like, and there was at least 9 of them, maybe 11. Like, yeah, as you said, like he keeps upping the number of people that attacked him and stuff. And then just like in the Shakespeare, just like in Henry IV, they just give the money back. They're like, here, because they don't care. Because the whole point was it was a joke, which is pretty amusing to watch. I don't know the name of the actor that does Bob Pigeon, but he's pretty funny. He's not even that fat, which is too bad. He's kind of hefty, and yet all they do is describe him as fat. Yeah. And describes him as this fat guy. You think he was like a big tub of guts or something?
That fat asshole's coming over here.
Yeah,
they dump piss on him from the rooftops. Yeah. I think that was when his character was first introduced.
Yeah, he first coming down the street with Flea. This is another one of those movies that Flea has worked his way into. Which is a thing, if you watch enough movies, you realize that's just a thing that happens every once in a while. Every once in a while, Flea is just suddenly in a movie. He hadn't been in a while, but then I saw my favorite movie of 2017 so far, Baby Driver. He's not important in the movie, but there's Flea. Flea's got a scene in there. Yeah, so you've got Flea in this sort of as like, I guess, sort of the main sidekick of Bob. Like, Bob is sort of the head of this whole group of young men, but it seems like Flea's character is kind of like the one who's always with him. And they come in together. It's pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. Flea was in Song to Song, character. Too. Sorry.
He was in what?
Song to Song.
What year was that?
17.
Oh, just recently. Okay.
The new Terrence Malick film. I think I was telling you about it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I didn't recognize the title. Yeah. Good for Flea. But yeah, Flea's awesome.
He's in all kinds
like 54.
Of stuff. I know. I was watching it. Like he was in the movie Suburbia. Did you ever see that one? It's like a punk movie.
Yeah,
a really good film. But that was almost like before he was big with the Chili Peppers. He's been doing this acting music thing for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, as you said, like he's always had sort of an interesting presence and look and voice. So you get like why. Like even if it wasn't a musician, there's something about him that makes him sort of castable, right? It's like you're memorable, It's like, stick you in a movie, even if it's not like he's never had big parts because he's probably not maybe a super talented actor or anything, but he's good in these little roles.
He was good as Needles. I think that maybe
Needles,
biggest acting
Needles
role.
in Back to the Future. Hey, McFly. It is weird. It is weird out of context. Just thinking about like Flea, like badgering Michael J. Fox. It's weird. I also like how he's introduced in Back to the Future because he just sort of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, he's not in the first movie at all. There's no mention that they know anybody named Needles. The next thing you know, like, the future version of him, it's like, oh, I'm working with Needles. Then you go back, and it's like, yeah, Needles is some guy I guess I go to school with or something, and there he is. He's just so haphazardly introduced, as if, like, there was an introduction scene, and they cut it out or something. Because it's just like they assume the audience knows. Yeah, there's Needles. He's a guy I know. I don't know. I just think it's funny. And there's no explanation of why he's called Needles. Like, I guess it's just a nickname, which is sure, fine. People have nicknames, but it's funny. It's funny to me anyway. I don't know. But getting back to the movie, yeah, so... Because eventually the movie does find footing where he gets proactive about... After we have just some various escapades, and as you said, we have the scene in the diner, which really isn't about advancing the plot so much as giving us an idea of these... the lives they lead. You know, the camera, as we said, drifts around, and we get to listen to the different young men talk about some of their experience and stuff. But eventually we do start following, like, more of a full story. They get hired... Well, this is before that, but when they get hired by the woman, it's pretty funny. He comes in, and he just sees two of his, like, friends or coworkers just sitting there, like, "Hey, what's up, man?" Like, "Oh yeah, we're all here on the same job." The same job being to have sex with this middle-aged woman. And he's like, "Oh, you know, she just, like, needs about 3 guys to get her warmed up or something." He says something like, "Nothing kinky," which is funny out of context, you know. But you get what they mean, right? Because they've seen a lot of shit, they've done a lot of shit. But to them, it's like 3-on-1. Okay, that's pretty easy stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, it's Mikey the Dyke.
And just when we're getting all ready for this amazing, this would be an amazing sex scene to see, he passes out and nothing happens. It's like, are we going to see like 3 guys taking on this woman? There's like, no. Not like you expect, like, you know, the movie's not going to have hardcore explicit sex scenes, but I mean, it's, you know, it's interesting some of the stuff it does. Twice it does tableaus, which is really interesting. The thing with the German guy, and then later with, Scott and the girl he meets, instead of like showing a sex scene, it's like a tableau. It's like a still of them, this position cut to this position, cut to this position, but all motionless, which is interesting. I hadn't really seen that in other films. It's kind of neat.
With Udo Kier.
Yeah,
isn't that the actor's name?
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny too because like, you're wondering what they're going to show in the case of the German guy they meet again, because it's like, it's the type of thing they sort of danced around. It's like, okay, we know whenever we see a scene of these guys with like these men, it's like they have their little preamble and their talk, but the whole thing is eventually it's going to get down to business, which is having sex of some sort and stuff like that. But usually you don't really see anything. And then in this, he's just like, business then. Well, let's get down to business. And then it just gives us some of the quick shots of what, you know, them having the threesome with him, which is, I don't know. Like I said, just the way they do it, it keeps it from being too crude, and it keeps it from being too shocking. And
it just almost sort of more crude, I think, than actually showing it. Yeah.
I guess because it lingers for a few seconds, gives you time to think about it before it moves to the next shot.
You know, you can tell it's not a still because they are moving just slightly.
Yeah.
It's like
it's a neat approach though. Yeah, one time somebody's like sucking on somebody's toes or something. You're like,
yeah, it is a neat approach for sure.
It's a neat approach.
I wanted to mention, I forget the guy's name, but the other guy that was in there with the woman, you know, one of the guys in the threesome. Well, first of all, he's reading Cosmopolitan and smoking a cigarette.
Was that Gary?
It could be. I'm not sure.
That's Gary. He's played by an actor named Rodney Harvey.
But I think the next scene, after he wakes up and they get back in town, they're in the coffee shop and he comes out and he's got like all these new clothes on and
that's the guy.
He's wearing Calvin Klein underwear.
Yeah, so that guy, as it turns out, was pretty legit because his name is Rodney Harvey. During the making of My Own Private Idaho, he began using heroin. After several stints in jail and attempts to get clean, he died of a heroin and cocaine overdose April 11th, 1998 at the Hotel Barbizon in L.A. So,
wow.
Died at the age of 30.
Wow.
And this guy had actually modeled for Calvin Klein in real life, so maybe that was a callback to that when he mentioned he's wearing the Calvin Klein underwear.
I just wanted to take a second to talk about his outfit, man. It is fucking ridiculous. Like,
yeah, it is.
I don't know what's going on with those pants and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even by 91 standards, Like to people that aren't that old and are just like, well, that's maybe what it was. Like, no, that's not what it was. Like, yeah, you'll definitely see some weird stuff early 90s. The early 90s was a disgusting time for fashion. The 80s and 90s were just sort of smashing together before something else emerged. And a lot of it wasn't pretty, and you can see a lot of it in some like those music videos. It's funny. I feel like 1990 is like the ugliest year like I've been alive for. And I'm honestly repulsed by like movies from that year.
I remember lots of hot pinks, lots of neon greens.
Yeah. And I mean, that lasted well into about 92 before that. I mean, I used to wear like, I'd be like 9 or 10. I'd wear like one like pink neon green sock, one green neon green sock. I was like, yeah.
Oh man, I used to wear pink, like hot pink, everything. I loved it.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much anymore, but.
Yeah. Pink was my favorite color as a little kid, but I don't think it was because of that. It really was. It's funny. I don't know what a world we live in now. It's just like, that little boy's favorite color is pink. We better take him to a psychiatrist. Like, you know, my parents didn't freak out or anything like that just because I like pink. There's like, I guess this incident where like they bought me a pair of like, they were already sort of, you know, effeminate anyway. These like blue fluffy slippers.
Yeah.
But I sent them back to the store to get me pink ones, you know, when I was about 3 or 4 or something like that. You know, my parents didn't like go, oh my God, and throw their hands up. They were like, okay, get them pink, you know.
Blue or red, fucker, make a choice.
Yeah, exactly. Red, and I mean, and I was of the age, and so are you, where that was made. The 80s was when that was made. Pink was girls, blue was boys. That was when those lines were drawn. It was about 1980 going forward. And
I was like completely draped in hot pink, man. I'm not even lying. Like, and I loved it. And you know, it was just totally accepted. You know, now, like even now, it wouldn't be. You know, people would still say,
even now,
that guy.
Yeah.
But I would be wearing tight bicycle shorts. Do you remember? Were those a thing for you guys?
Yeah, but
just like really tight spandex shorts.
I was a little young for that, luckily. But the time I was at the age where maybe I would have worn them, they were gone out of fashion. I mean,
those and hot pink, neon green.
Yeah, I mean, besides some of the colors, I was mostly spared wearing anything that would be regarded more of like, you know, effeminate or gay or whatever by today's standards. Like, just by like weird timing. I never really, like I said, the socks was about as much as it got for me. Like, I never wore anything too tight.
It went straight into like baggy jeans and stuff for you.
Yeah,
right?
and that's really what I went for, and that's what I embraced. Hell, even into like high school. It wasn't until I got to university I started wearing like a shirt that fit properly. In high school, I always wore like t-shirts that were too big for me and stuff. And part of it was just because I was small. Like, I was a small kid, and being small, I felt the need to wear layers and be more baggy. Was because I was already small. So like, I never like went anywhere, even if it wasn't noticeable. I never wore like one t-shirt. I wore like a t-shirt right over another t-shirt, just for my own. I don't know. It just made me feel more secure for some reason.
Sure. Well, it was the look of the times too. The baggy, just draped in clothing.
Yeah, and that was very much me. Yeah. That was very much me. Junior high and high school, you know, wide leg jeans, maybe a t-shirt over a long sleeve shirt or whatever, or stuff like that. I mean, and always hoodies. And I still that's the one thing I have nowadays: hoodies. I just never go anywhere without a hoodie.
And a pair of jeans.
My closet is full of hoodies. I have more than I could ever need. Like, I can't get mad at girls for their obsession with shoes and be like, well, all these shoes, because like I kind of have like a similar hoodie issue, where it's like I have too many, and I have a bunch that I never even wear anymore, but I would never consider getting rid of.
Sure.
So, yeah, I guess that we all have our things when it comes to that, but just to let people who are maybe a little younger, didn't know that time, know Jay is right. What that guy's wearing looks ridiculous, even by the standards of the time. He looks ridiculous.
I couldn't quite pinpoint. Like, it must be some inside joke or something. It's so out of nowhere.
Yeah. And like I said, they point out the Calvin Klein thing, which is an inside joke. So, yeah, it's probably a few different things, I'd say.
Yeah, and then Mike says, like, man, what an asshole, or something like that. Which I think we're supposed to assume that's the money he made off of screwing that lady, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Look at my Nikes.
But so, I mean, if you want to say like a plot really gets going is when he finally decides to go to Idaho, hence the title. Even though Idaho is not that important in the grand scheme of things, we're only in Idaho for briefly in this movie, but he says that he knows that he has an older brother in Idaho So if he's going to find his mother, he should start there. So he and Scott go on the road on Scott's dirt bike thing that breaks down a few times. And they go to Idaho and they find his brother, because I guess he has an address for him. His brother living, I think, in a trailer or something like that. And then it gets pretty weird because he's telling him about the mother. He's saying about how when he was younger, it was just the three of them. There was no father in the picture and stuff. And eventually we get to the revelation of him telling the truth, where he says, I already know the truth. Like, you're not my brother, you're my father. But it never came across very clear to me. Is he his father, not his brother, or is he brother and his father? Like,
oh shit, I didn't think about that.
like was it his mother too, and he just had sex with his mother, and that's he's like, is he his brother and his father? Like, that never becomes clear to me. And maybe I'm just depraved for going that way. Maybe when he says you're my father, that just means, okay, well, he's your father. And then,
I think you're right. I think he's both, because he's telling him the story about how
the way he tells it makes it sound like he's definitely her son, is the way it makes it sound.
But then he says, I know who my father is, and it's you. And then the whoever the guy is, he says, you know too much, or something.
Yeah, and he gets really upset at first. He smashes a few things, says, you know too much. But then he comes back and, shows him the postcard to give him the information and stuff.
I think he's both.
Yeah, because just the way he describes it when he's telling the story about the three of them living together, the way he said mom and stuff like that, and the way he talked about like how she dated some asshole who she wound up murdering, apparently.
That was probably his dad.
Like, is that... Yeah, I was thinking, is that a true story, or is he just making shit up? Like, you never really get to know. And like I said, you could think that maybe that was who his dad was, and he just hated him, and they replaced him to have some sort of incestuous relationship. Like, I don't know. But the movie doesn't make it clear, so you can either think, okay, no, like, it's just this guy lied about being his brother. He actually is his father. But part of me thinks it's his brother and his father. that guy was the son, because I mean, he's pretty young, because it seems to suggest that like maybe he only, like, how much older do you think he is? Like 14, 15 years tops?
So either he's his brother and his father, just his brother, or his stepfather. Right? Yes. That's the options we have here.
I suppose so, yeah.
I mean, yeah, he is awfully young. Like that's one thing I was like, man, that guy looks, how old could he have been when he was born?
Yeah. 10? So because and I mean, not to go down this path, but I mean, you can't help but think that it seems to suggest to me that maybe she was like dating some asshole who she killed, and then she wound up fucking her son, who was probably well underage at the time, and getting pregnant. Is kind of what I get out of it.
Yeah, that definitely adds another element to the movie.
Yeah, but nothing I've read about it suggests some sort of incest angle, like him being a product of incest. But I mean, I just saw the movie. I don't know what I'd be missing. But I mean, it's not very in there. And yeah, it's Scott is his name, or Richard. Sorry, yeah, Scott's the other guy. Yeah, Scott's Keanu Reeves. Richard tries to tell Mike who his real father is, but Mike says he knows it is Richard. Like, that's all that it says, like, in the plot summary. Okay, but yeah, that Richard's not his brother; he's his father. But and I haven't read anything where people talk about like an incest angle. But to me, it seems like a logical conclusion.
I haven't either, but the way that conversation went down, though, I think you're right.
Particularly at the start, just the way he talks about when he was like a little baby, and he's saying how it was the three of us, you, me, and mom. He makes it sound more like he regarded her as mom.
His mom.
Yeah, but so pretty messed up if that's the case, and definitely interesting and something to, I guess, for people to debate. If somebody else if you saw the movie and drew a different conclusion, let us know what your theory on that is, or if we made some sort of mistake that we're not thinking of, let us know. But
we'll get Gus Van Sant on here next week to
get him to clear that up for us.
Yeah. We have some questions, sir.
Sure. But so anyway, so he leaves an address of this hotel that she'd been working at, which isn't too far away. So they make their way to the hotel, and just by happenstance happen to run into the German guy that they are both acquainted with from before, who obviously is a somewhat affluent guy who has some money, which really works out to them because you get the idea that staying with him gives them the money they need to go to Italy, I assume. Plus, he also I guess they sell him the motorbike too, because there's a later scene of him getting stopped by the same cop that stops them.
Yeah.
Where he's going down the highway riding the same thing.
That guy's credited as Indian Cop, by the way.
Yeah, very nice.
But and he's a terrible actor. Gonna give you a ticket. Oh, you love your bike, sir? Still gonna give you a ticket. I think I just did a better job than he did.
I think it was a little more real the way you did it. But anyway, so then that leads to the big leap of they get to go to Italy. Because, when they're in the hotel, they find out from the hotel manager people that she'd saved up a long time to go to Italy, because apparently she said she had family from there that she wanted to find. And she left some sort of forwarding address. So they go, and she lives somewhere, I guess, outside of Rome. And you get these weird cuts, and I know it's on purpose because it's supposed to sync up with his narcolepsy, where he falls asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be part of being a narcoleptic, is falling asleep and then just waking up in a different place, I guess. And that happens several times in the movie. And this time, he's waking up somewhere in Rome with, like, I guess, the Italian equivalent of what he'd come from, like, young men on the street. They're just hanging out with him. I don't understand Italian. They're talking to him, but I don't know what they're saying to him. And then he finds Scott, and Scott said, "Oh yeah, I just asked them to look after you while I got a cab." And then they find the address where the mother had been, which is somewhere in the country, I guess, outside the city.
Did I miss how they actually got to Rome? Because it was like it just cut and they were there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And like I said, I guess those cuts are on purpose, the idea of him just waking up. So yeah, you just have him waking up somewhere in Rome. So yeah, they don't have any scene of them getting on a plane or anything. Although later, coming back, you have him waking up on the plane when he lands back in Portland. But so from there, it's another sort of dead end in that they find out that the mother had been there. She'd worked as sort of like a maid and also to teach English, and they found the girl that she'd helped teach English to, but she said then the mother had gone back to America. Then they spend the next few days with the girl in this like house. She said it was her uncle's house, this little farmhouse type place. And it's got to be like the worst time for Mike because he hasn't found his mother, and now he's realizing that Scott, who he confessed his love to early on, has fallen in love with this girl, and nightly he gets to go to sleep hearing them having sex, which is got to be pretty terrible. And then
yeah, exactly.
And then I guess Scott decides to accelerate his whole plan about leaving the life behind now that he has this girl with him too. So he just really blatantly tells him, okay, maybe I'll see you down the road sometime, but I'm leaving. Here's some money, but I'm going off with her now. And so he goes back to America. And I don't even know why they need to. Like, why wouldn't they go back to him? If he's going back to America anyway, why wouldn't they go all together? He's not going to stay. He knows there's nothing to stay for.
I didn't get that either.
It seems unnecessary that he's like, we're going to part ways here. Like, why would you part ways here? He has no reason to stay here. He might as well go back with you.
He's obviously going back to America. Why is Mike not going with you?
I don't get it. And it's not like he needs more privacy. You don't mind having him around while you fuck her. And anyway, for whatever reason, I guess just to give us again, like how much charm Scott has, how much people like him, you get this feel, this girl's very taken by him. She's very affectionate. She's the one always initiating the contact and the kissing and stuff. There's like a lingering scene of afterward them driving off in the cab and she's like touching his face and kissing him. Like she's so thrilled that she found Scott, who's so amazing apparently. And it just makes at least me like a lot of audience like kind of hate Scott all the more. It's just like, geez, not only a bad friend, but geez, you stupid lucky bastard where things just fall and you're like, next thing we know, now he's taken over his father completely. His father's died and now he's left or announced the street life behind him. And he's got this beautiful Italian girl on his arm. Like, meanwhile, Mike is back where he started, except now he's lost his best friend too. And he has not found his mother. And it's kind of a bummer. And so really the last pivotal scene is when doesn't even involve Mike. It just has Scott going into the restaurant, the sort of high-class restaurant or whatever, with the girl on his arm and being welcomed back into society. The people, all the suits and business types, offering him condolences on the loss of his father and saying how great he looks and everything, and offering him all this support and stuff. As we said, the guy saying, "Hey, you ever think about career in politics?" We get the idea. Yes, the world is Scott's oyster now. He has his father's money. He has his position. And the fact that he for 4 years or so basically been a problematic child living on the streets as a prostitute is well forgiven And it was well known because remember earlier in the film when they have the police do the raid on the apartment, like Bob and all the others go off, but Scott is in no way afraid of him. Is in no way afraid of the cops, and he gets Mike under the covers, and they pretend to be having sex when the cops come in on him because you know he sort of enjoys the power he has over them. Like they see these two, young men supposedly having sex here, blah blah blah, squatting illegally in this building, but the cops know who he is, and they're like, "Oh, hello, sir," and they're just like, "Oh, good to see you," and he's just, and he has all the dignity in the world, even though there he is, half naked in the bed with this other guy, and yet the cops have to bow and scrape to him. And they're just like, oh, when your father brings a message that you come to see him, and he's just like, "Fuck you!" Like
he does this. Cops, he does this motion. Like,
yeah, right. And the cops can't do anything about it. Exactly, right. So it was a well-known thing. I guess sort of like a public secret, right? Like something everybody knows, but people don't really talk about. So then that's even weirder because at first, when Bob and the others come in to say, "Oh, now we get to see him in front of all these people," and he just says, "I don't know you. Please go away." Well, that makes sense. Sure, that's what you would do. But then he just fully admits everything. Very Shakespearean again, like in full view of the crowd. Like he lets everybody know, actually, I do know him. Yep. And I liked him more than my dad. And I led this weird hedonistic lifestyle with him, blah. But now I renounce it all. Like, why would you do that? You could have just said, "I don't know you, go away," and left it at that. But instead, he just decides to admit full view to everybody. Yeah, that was me. I knew this guy. We hung around. Actually, I liked him more than my dad. Blah, 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 blah. But then he's just like, it's all behind me now. I renounce it.
It makes him look like a bigger asshole doing it that way rather than just saying, "Be gone. I don't know you."
It does.
Cops, get this guy out of here.
Yeah. And almost shortly after that, Bob takes the fatal heart attack. And as they say, he broke Bob's heart and he dies.
He broke two people's hearts.
Yeah. And how long before that girl gets her heart broken?
Exactly.
Probably not too long, because you get the feeling Scott's kind of a user of people. He has his good qualities, but at the end of the day, he's a user of people. He just sort of gets what he wants out of them and then moves on.
Absolutely.
That's where he sort of, is lacking compared to Prince Hal in Shakespeare, because Prince Hal doesn't exactly renounce that stuff quite so strongly. Like he doesn't just treat them all like they're dirt when he decides to take on his responsibilities. He's just like, yes, it's time. He doesn't quite, as I recall, turn his back on them that firmly, or at least chastise them openly the way Scott does to Bob.
Yeah, it's one thing to just be like, "Okay, guys, I'm done with that."
Yeah, I've got responsibilities. I gotta do this now. But yeah, he goes out of his way to be a dick about it.
Yeah, exactly. But he does go to Bob's funeral.
Well, no, he doesn't.
Is he not there? Is that not?
No, they show the two funerals together. He's at his father's funeral.
That was his father's funeral. I got
That's why it's so different, right? And they go back and forth. They show the very solemn father's funeral with the minister or priest blathering on, and then they cut back to the Bob funeral where they're all sort of running around and chanting Bob's name and being crazy.
I thought they were up on the hill.
He can see them. He can see them. They're right across the land.
Okay.
They're in the same general area. When you can hear the music they're playing when the other guy's giving the eulogy or whatever. Okay. So yeah, they're basically they're in this part and they're in this part. They can see each other. But he's at his father's funeral, but he can hear all the Bob funeral stuff, and that's again something that reminds me a lot of Rent and stuff. Not that there's a funeral in Rent, but just the way they all act when they're all bouncing around, going Bob, Bob, and sort of dancing and stuff. It's a lot like the characters in Rent act and stuff like that.
Flea eventually just flips out, starts tearing shit up, screaming Bob. Because I think Flea was the closest to Bob of all those people. Yeah,
as I said, he seemed to be the main sidekick.
Yeah,
was Flea. Bud was the character's name. But yeah, then you've got some of the other characters making out on the casket and stuff. It just you could say it's inappropriate, but it's very true. Nothing reminds people of sex and stuff like death, because it's just we could die anytime. We better do it now. I think. I think funerals definitely make some people horny, for sure.
Oh wow, and apparently morgues too.
Yeah.
Just that dead body, man. That's what does it.
Mm-hmm. And
corpses do it for me.
And Mike joins in. He joins in the revelry.
Yeah.
He's still very much a part of it, even though he's gone through his own kinds of loss in this. He's still paying proper tribute to Bob. And then we get our bookend where he's back out on the highway, suffers one of his narcoleptic fits. A truck stops, 2 people rob him in his sleep, leave him on the road, and then you have the sort of the cryptic ending where the camera's far back, another car has stopped. We can't make out who's gotten out of the car, even if it's a man or a woman. It's hard to tell, and they take him into the car with him. I don't know what we're supposed to make of that.
Then they go back to this old house isn't that the same house that they showed at one point being dropped on?
Yeah.
Like the road.
Yes.
On the road. So I don't know what we're supposed to make out of that.
Yeah, I thought they would show the house from like the home movies.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought they would show.
Are we supposed to assume he's dead?
Well, he's not dead. He's definitely just asleep.
Or going to die.
But I mean, are we supposed to assume like some crazy person took him or some kind person took him? Like it's one or the other. Either some crazy person took him or some kind person took him. Or if you want to believe in something really stretched, his mother somehow found him, which wouldn't really make much sense, right? But you could think that if you wanted. Like she somehow heard about that he'd been looking for her and she found him. Maybe, I don't know. But that's how it ends, and I'm not really sure what we're supposed to take away from the ending. And as I said, I get the whole narcolepsy thing, but I don't think you need it. Because you could have had the same thing where he's not narcoleptic, where instead of like him falling asleep, they could just shown the harshness of the world by 2 people stopping the truck, getting out and beating him up and taking the stuff. It would have been the same thing, more or less. But that's fine. I mean, I don't have anything against the narcoleptic thing. I just felt like the movie's already telling this sort of finding yourself, coming of age type story. It's already doing the parallel of the Shakespeare thing with Scott's storyline. I don't know if you really need the narcolepsy, but it's fine. I guess it doesn't make it too busy. I mean, everything's still it's a fairly coherent movie. It's not like it's confusing or anything, so it's not a real complaint or anything.
Well, I like the ending, how it's open ended, so you can kind of form your own conclusion. I always like that style of ending. Maybe not quite as vague as this one is, but. Because you really don't know what to think. Obviously, it's some foreshadowing, I guess, with that house, crashing into the road. I forgot when that happened, but it was something happened in the film when he.
Yeah, something was happening, and then they showed that come down. Was it maybe intercut when Bob was having the heart attack?
I'm not sure.
It was intercut with some action.
Right,
There was some action, and then they would cut to that coming down. Part of me thinks it was when Bob was having the heart attack, but maybe it was earlier. I mean, I do like the vagueness of the ending, because the vagueness fits the whole overall tone of the film. And like we said, it's not ham-fisted. It's not just shoving answers at us and explanations at us, and it's not just trying to stereotype things. Like, it realizes that these are complex issues, whether it's about being gay or being on the street or not knowing where you came from or having familial problems. These are all complex things, and the movie doesn't try to like set us up in some arc where it's like, okay, here's this problem, this is solved, this problem, this arc. It doesn't do that, and I appreciate that. So the ending fits. Like, it doesn't feel like it's out of nowhere. It fits to me with the rest of the film because it is trying to give proper due to how complex these things are, and how that, like, when you're dealing especially with diversity of people, whether it's race or sexual orientation or stuff like that, it's a complex thing. and it's not black and white, to use a bit of a cliche there and stuff like that. It's a complex whole that all sort of fits together in different ways. And everybody in the world, has to navigate the world in a different way type thing, without getting too esoteric, but yeah, type thing.
Sure.
But yeah, as far as like being a film that would be viewed through the lens of like the LGBTQ community or whatever, I figure they would praise the film for being more complex and not simplistic, and that it wasn't like adhering to a bunch of stereotypes, and it wasn't trying to make a bunch of points about like, what this means or that means, or what being gay, it doesn't do any of that. It skirts that and just treats it like, here's a real person who's not defined by any one thing. He's a collection of things, and here's his struggle. It's not about that. Just to tie it into comics for a minute, because it's a big deal. It's a bit of a reach, but it's a bit of a reach, but it did remind me a little bit of this, and something that made me happy too, because it did a similar thing, was the really great series, the DC series the one that should have been its show, instead of Gotham, it should have been Gotham Central. The Gotham Central, the early 2000s series that focused on the cops, where Batman was barely ever seen. Every once in a while he'd show up for a panel, but the whole thing was it followed the cops, and it was very proceduralistic. It was very, despite the fact it was a comic book world, in Gotham where all sorts of crazy stuff happened, they really tried to follow like what it was really like to be in a cop precinct. Like you had the light shift and you had the day shift. You had a complex set of characters. And of course, one of the main characters who had existed before GCPD that had always been around in comics was Renee Montoya. Renee Montoya is also one of the more prominent gay characters in comics, in that she basically came out fairly early by comic book standards. It was probably around 92 or something that it was revealed that she was a lesbian. But anyway, so you have this whole arc in the GCPD comic that centers on her. And some of it has to do with, like, even though that she's been out around most people and most people know she's a lesbian, like her parents, she's the daughter of Cuban immigrants, and they're very Catholic. And her parents only just found out now. She's about 32 or something. And they only found out now, and they strongly, strongly disapprove. Like, they're really upset by it. But what I like about the arc is that that's only one other thing that's going on in it. And there is a part about how she's coming to terms with who she is and accepting who she is. But it's not about being gay. The fact is, she's known that she's been, since she was 15, she's known that she's gay, and she's been completely comfortable with it. And while, of course, she wishes society and, of course, her parents were more accepting of it, she wasn't one of those people that had those moments like, I wish I could be normal, or, she was fine with it. What the arc was actually about, and that whole coming to terms, had nothing to do with that. That was just in the background. That was some added stress, because the whole thing was she got outed at work. Somebody put up a picture of her kissing her girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people knew anyway, but now she was outed type thing. And it was dealing with fallout. But the main thing was, like, part of the reason was there was this guy that worked at the precinct called Corrigan, who was a crime scene investigator guy. And he was dirty. He was often known for tampering with evidence and stuff like that. And she had crossed him, and this was part of his revenge. But what really came down to it was, at one point, she sort of confronted him at the cop bar, and they took it outside to fight. And she just beats the ever-living shit out of him and scares the hell out of people. And really what the arc is about, and there's more stuff from there, but it's not her coming to terms with the fact that she's gay. It's her coming to terms with the fact that even though she's a good person, or thinks of herself as a good person, she's actually a violent person that turns to violence as a way to solve problems, even though she thinks she's doing it for the right reasons. And she realizes that that's kind of an upsetting thing. And really, that's what the arc's about. And I really give it a lot of credit for that. I think it's one written by Ed Brubaker. Either him or Greg Rucka at the time. They were both doing it together. And I just have to give that a lot of praise. It's one of the better stories centering on a gay character, but where the gay issue is sort of brought up, but it's not the focal point. Like, she's dealing with the fallout again, some people making, homophobic remarks to her and stuff like that, dealing with her parents being upset. But it's not her being some self-hating gay going, oh, what's wrong with me? Or why can't I be normal? Or, she's not, that's just sort of, she's already over that. She's dealt with that. She's over that. What she's dealing with, again, is coming to terms with the fact, like, she's kind of a violent person that relies on it as a solution. And I think it's really well done. And it just reminds me a little bit of this, because, yeah, that's not what River Phoenix is dealing with here. He's not, like, worried or wondering what's wrong with him that he's gay. Like, that's all fine. Like, he's comfortable with it. It's just the other stuff, things that anybody could relate to, whether you're gay or not, wanting to know where you come from, wanting to belong somewhere, wanting to have some sort of sense of family and stuff like that. So, yeah, I give the movie a lot of high marks for that, because, well, you could say, okay, it's a queer movie or whatever like that. Like, that's really not the focus.
Absolutely. I found this, it was an interview with Gus Van Sant. It was actually an Out magazine, so okay, cool. Focuses a lot on the gay aspects of the film. But he was asked a question about the class differences between the two characters, Mike and Scott. Mm-hmm. And he didn't really even intend for that to be a thing, because so I'll just read you here. It says, in the film, Keanu's character always had a problem because he was from Shakespeare, and in the play, he's a prince and going to be king of the country. We couldn't find the same thing in modern times. I found out the mayor of Portland's son was gay, but he didn't necessarily end up on the streets. And Henry IV, Prince Hal, is not a hustler, but he's hanging out on the streets with the ne'er-do-wells and Falstaff. And there are other characters along with him, Pistol being one of them, who I think would translate into River's character. So that was kind of interesting. That
Yeah.
pistol. Do you remember that character? And
Yeah, I do. I do now because I've just done some really quick reading here in my Norton Shakespeare. I have the complete Norton Shakespeare in 4 volumes. This is the Histories volume. I had to buy this years ago for school, but it is actually a really good thing to have. I mean, I have all Shakespeare's plays, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. But yeah, I was just quickly looking up some of the scenes and stuff that were the same and stuff. And yeah, some of it's coming back to me now from when I studied it many years ago. We talked about this earlier. I've done quite a few Shakespeare plays, like scholastically, like with the purpose of studying them for school, and I've also just read some of my own time and stuff. But so I have a good understanding of quite a few of them. But when it comes to the histories, I'm not great. I get a lot of them confused with each other. You've got Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, Henry V. You've got Richard II. I think there's Richard III. There's a whole bunch of them, and I find it very easy to mix them up. So well, I think of a lot of Shakespeare as a strength of mine, not so much the histories. This is not a play where I'm just like, oh yeah, I remember everything. Like, no, it's very hazy. Maybe I'll reread it again sometime in the near future just for the hell of it, because it is true. It does remind me of like what an amusing character Falstaff is. Falstaff is such an enduring character that even if you don't know Shakespeare, you've probably seen a lot of characters in popular fiction that were directly inspired by Falstaff.
Oh, absolutely.
Falstaff was a very influential, specifically comedic character, and that's one of the things like that's kind of neat about Henry IV. Like I said, this isn't one of Shakespeare's comedies; it's a history, which means it could also be it could also be a tragedy and stuff. And obviously, people die and there's serious subject matter. But Shakespeare felt the need to balance it out with these humorous scenes with people like Falstaff, and it actually works really well. But anyway. But it's funny about the gay thing. Like, I think this is just more to do with Keanu Reeves being so young at the time. Like he was around like 2021, and also because I don't think Keanu Reeves meant anything insensitive by what he said. It just comes across, and I don't even. It just sounds really funny when he's talking about playing that character and stuff like that. He said in an interview, "I'm not against gays or anything, but I won't have sex with guys. I would never do that on a film. We did a little of it in Idaho, and believe me, it was hard work. Never again." Which is just so funny. It's just like
I don't believe that. I mean, I don't. He seems like he's coming off as, the ultra, hetero dude. I mean, he was friends with River Phoenix. I mean, come on, you're an actor. I mean, I'm not saying like penetration, but you can hug the guy.
I know. I just think it's, like I said, it's just funny the way he says it. Like, I'm not against gays or anything, but I wouldn't have sex with guys. Well, of course not. He makes it sound like if you're heterosexual,
I'm okay with fags. Yeah, I'm okay with fags.
Be like, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like, the only way you could approve of a gay person is if you yourself could be gay. That doesn't even make any sense. Like, he's just like, but I won't have sex with guys.
I'm not gonna have sex with guys though.
I'm not gonna, as if that's what gay people ask.
That's the ultimate approval. Is
the ultimate approval is just like, I'm not gay, but I'll do gay things to show that I have no problem with you being gay. So it's just such a funny quote, and I'm sure like he probably would cringe if he read it now. I'd like to think that he's a bit more, of the world now, mature and stuff. I don't know. A lot of people like. It's been well documented that I don't think of much of him as an actor. I like him in the specific roles he fits into so he can do it. But as far as like being an actor who can actually play a real character and, show depth, I don't think he can do it. And I pick on him. But I did say when we did River's Edge, I thought that was some of the better acting he's done, even though, as we said, it's probably not too far off from his real personality. In this one, I kind of go back and forth. It's harder to tell because, yes, River Phoenix is the real performance in here. But Scott's not like a bad performance, but it's much harder to gauge because of all the Shakespeare stuff, right? Because that's kind of unreal anyway, like him giving the big speeches and flourishes and waving his arms around. So it's a lot harder to really judge how good the acting is because a lot of the scenes with Scott where he's most important don't call on Keanu Reeves to dig deep and give a really genuine good performance. They just more call on him to, just sort of be theatrical.
It's either be theatrical or be yourself.
Yeah.
No, I don't give him as hard a time as you do, but Yeah, I like a
Well,
lot
I
of
mean,
stuff.
we've all seen what happened when he tries to like be theatrical in a serious sense, like for instance, the Dracula film. Oh my God,
Oh yeah.
there's no defending that though. I mean, come on, even if you're softer on him than I am, there's no defending
No,
that one. Like
I'm not taking that one.
watching him and what's her name, the klepto,
Winona Ryder.
Renata Ryder, watching those two like struggle through that movie is just, man, that's hard.
I agree. It's
I have a lot of problems with that movie anyway. Like I hate the script anyway. Even if it had good actors, I wouldn't like the movie. But yeah, those two are just, it's some of the more memorable, cringe-worthy performances to me is those two. And in the middle, you have like Gary Oldman being awesome like he always is. And like and it is true, like on the set, like Gary Oldman would like stop scenes because he'd be like, "Are you kidding me with this?" Like he couldn't even comprehend like how bad like his co-stars were when he had to do scenes with them.
It's just bad casting, really, is what that comes down to.
Absolutely. It was, a misread, right? Both actors were suddenly sort of rising, the two of them. They were sort of rising, as we said. They become sort of popular. So it's like, oh, these are good names to put in, but horrible casting.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe watching his performance in My Own Private Idaho, you may think, okay, yeah, he could do a Dracula film. But
maybe that had some part of it to do it. But like I said, it illustrates the difference between playing a character that's playing something theatrically and then playing a character who's doing something that you could call theatrical, but it played 100% straight. Like you're supposed to be like seeing him like be Jonathan Harker. Like, okay, he's speaking with an accent, a terrible accent, and he's saying like, somewhat flowery language, but it's completely different from him like giving stories about robbing guys, and I don't know.
Francis, I just saw this movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I've found it. I found our actor.
Yeah, that's our Jonathan Harker. Like, you should hear this guy's British accent. It's like you would never guess. You would swear that he was born and raised. He's a chameleon. Yeah, see, I like Keanu Reeves, and I think he's probably a cool guy too, and I like the things he's for. But yeah, and I mean, it's not a crime to be an actor who isn't a chameleon. Like the world needs those actors. Like we said, like I don't know how good of an actor Tom Cruise is, but when it comes to him playing like his Tom Cruise self in those Tom Cruise roles, it's really good and often enjoyable to watch. Not in everything, but usually you can get behind them and stuff. So it's not a crime. The world does need that, But in the sense of River Phoenix, if I can go on a little bit, I always thought River Phoenix was, it's awful that he died because I thought he was going to be, to me, like everything suggests he would have been absolute A-list. He would have been like right up there with people like, well, at the height of their careers anyway, somebody like a Johnny Depp, somebody like a Brad Pitt, like really like box office, gold. And able to play a wide variety of roles, like everything about him. Sure, he had great good looks. He was blessed with very good looks, but he had a lot of talent to back it up.
Yeah, by the time I was really aware of things, he was already, the poster child for, Just Say No. I wasn't really in tune with the scene until after he had already passed away. So I've watched all this stuff, posthumously.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I was aware of him before he died because he's in my favorite movie of all time, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, as the young Indy.
Right.
So yeah, that's my favorite movie, and it was a logical step for him. He'd already played Harrison Ford's son. Now he's going to play in Mosquito Coast. So now he's going to play the young version of Harrison Ford. On the recommendation of Harrison Ford himself, he said, well, River looks a lot like I looked when I was younger. So they're like, okay, go with it. And that was great. It's a lot better than, say, him as the young Indiana Jones makes me a lot happier than Shia LaBeouf as Indiana Jones' son, I can tell you that.
No. Hard no to that.
But anyway, so I did know about him before he died, but it was mostly for that. And then, and I was still a kid when he died, and I was like, oh no, so at the time he died, I wasn't thinking what great potential he had to be a great actor. No, it wasn't anything like that. It was years later. But I did know who he was before he died. I did, because of that movie. And but yeah, I mean, he's just given some of my favorite performances as like a kid actor, the young Indy.
Well,
Mosquito Coast, which I think is a very unfairly overlooked movie, and maybe we'll do it sometime. And Stand By Me.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite film of River?
Well, I can't count Last Crusade as a film of River. He's just in the beginning. So I'll have to say Mosquito Coast.
Okay. I think I may have caught that, but I don't remember a whole lot about it, so I'll have to go revisit.
I think you'd at least find it interesting. I have some theories about why it didn't do so well. The main being, like, when you think about Harrison Ford's career trajectory and how he blew up with Star Wars and Indiana Jones and played all these really awesome, cool roles in the 80s and stuff, it was the first time where he played a character that the whole point was he was kind of unlikable. Like, he's kind of a jerk. Like, the whole point is he's this guy who's really full of himself. He's really pompous and thinks he's smarter than everybody. And then he basically puts his own family through hell to prove himself right. And he's like basically right? Well, again, this wasn't well known at the time, right? So I think it just really turned audiences off to see Harrison Ford, who'd always played like a really likable guy you could root for, play a guy that you're just like, oh, what an asshole. Like, I think that was one of the main reasons that movie didn't do too well, because it's a good book and it's a good adaptation, and a lot of what sells it is River Phoenix's character, who in the book is the narrator, and they give him little parts of narration in the movie. It's one of my favorite endings too. Like the ending lines, him reading those well, not reading, but him saying those ending lines are really great too. But I don't know. Yeah, I think we should definitely do it at some point, or at least unless you absolutely hate it or something. But I think it's definitely worth a watch. It's an interesting movie. If you don't remember the setup or anything, like he's like a not too well known like patent holding inventor. He's invented things here and there. He's done some stuff. He seems to mostly work in doing like cooling systems. When you come into it, he seems to be using some sort of cooling system for farms or something. Mm-hmm. But he's also kind of one of those like not doomsday type people, but one of those people that wants to live off the grid. Like, he can't stand just like, this is late 1987 already. It's funny, you see a lot of it now too, and there's even more of it now too. But it's those people that like think that like America is really going down the tubes. The government is a complete farce, like any government, that is just a joke. Not exactly an anarchist, but somebody that feels like he should live off the grid. Like, don't rely on a government. Be completely self-sufficient. He feels like, be self-sufficient. Give yourself, like, I don't want to pay the electric company for electricity. I'll make my own electricity. I don't want to pay all this for this. And there's a part early in the movie with, I think, a young and then unknown Jason Alexander, where Jason Alexander, that's the actor's name, right? The guy from Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Okay, from George. Yeah, Jason Alexander's like this guy at like a hardware store. He's the clerk, and he comes in to like buy some stuff, and then he finds out like this thing he wants to buy that he can only buy like it was made in Japan, and he freaks out because he wants made in America stuff, and he's just like, well, that doesn't exist anymore, and he just like flips out on him and stuff. Like, that's one of his last straws. So yeah, he's that kind of character. But again, he's really pompous, and he thinks he's smarter than everybody. And so eventually, what he does, he's like, fuck this, fuck America. I can do better. And he takes his family and he moves to like somewhere way down in South America to like be self-sufficient in like some village off the grid. And he winds up moving a couple different times because he can't really get what he wants and stuff like that. That's where River Phoenix met Martha Plimpton. She's in the movie, and that's when they started. They were only like 12. They started dating when they were like 12. Yeah. Which wasn't weird for him because he lost his virginity when he was like 10 or something. He had a really weird upbringing and like that sort of hippie commune thing with his family and stuff, where that was like encouraged. They were just like, oh, you like the girl next door? Okay, have sex with her.
Encouraged? Like, I don't know about that.
I would say, it seems to me, I'm not going to say his family directly, but basically what he grew up in, yeah, that was more or less encouraged. They were just like, I mean, there's one thing that, yeah, I do agree that for parents, yes, it's cool to like teach your children, these things are natural and healthy, sure. But they weren't even saying, you might want to wait a bit. They were like, go for it,
Unless you want the girl next door to be pregnant, though, that's what I would be worried about.
Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, he lost his virginity like a really young age, like 11 or something like that. And that was directly to do with it. He was dating Samantha Mathis when he died, I guess. I always had a crush on her, too. Thought they were, like, the best-looking couple of all time. To me, I was just like, oh, amazing. I'd be like, oh, I'd pay for their sex tape. Like, wow, I'm really overthinking this. I need to get over this, I need to let this go. But I still adore her. She's really great, Samantha Mathis. But what would I just read? Oh, yeah. And he had like a bunch of brothers and sisters, including, of course, Joaquin, who is the different one because he changed his name to Joaquin because his original name was like Leaf. They were like Summer and Phoenix and River and stuff like that. And
Rain? Isn't there a Rain?
There's a Rain. And I believe Summer just divorced Casey Affleck.
They're divorced now.
Yeah, that's what I read, that they just got divorced, I think. But, and I guess River had wanted to start like a music career and stuff too. Like he was gonna he was like working on an album when he died. I don't think it was it wouldn't have been anything I like. I can tell that. I've seen enough footage and stuff that it's all, folky stuff I wouldn't like. But
I've heard of some of it. Yeah, there's a documentary on Netflix that's really good. I was wondering if you'd seen it.
On River?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where I saw the footage of the album stuff.
It had his other bandmates, like, kind of listening to the demo or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's what I saw. Yeah, I saw that.
Well, Too Young to Die, I believe it was. It's a...
there were different episodes of shows called Too Young to Die. The first one I watched was River Phoenix, obviously. That's what it was.
Heath Ledger is in there. He's the...
I didn't watch that one, but I watched 2 or 3 of them.
It's good, though. The Heath Ledger one's good.
Yeah. I wonder if it's still on mine. It was months ago. It probably is. But
like Netflix original stuff, does that show up on Canadian Netflix?
Yeah.
So I think that may be a Netflix original.
Yeah.
Could be wrong.
There's a lot of good Netflix originals. I've seen some like, it's starting to find its rhythm, some of this Netflix original stuff. I watched Shimmer Lake. It's nothing special, but it's, solid type of movie.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Interesting cast of like C-list actors. It's like the first time I saw Ron Livingston in something in 20 years. He and I love the idea. There's not enough of them, but he and Rob Corddry play like FBI agents that are like paired together.
That's pretty funny.
And you've got Rainn Wilson in there.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, he's always good.
He's an interesting actor. I think he's interesting. But what was I gonna say? The movie's not that original or anything. It runs backwards. Not that it's that hard. Like, it starts on a Friday and it works you back to Tuesday.
That's cool.
And you can sort of see where it's going. It's nothing amazing, but I mean, to me, like, yeah, this is the sort of thing like Netflix should be doing. Like, just like good little movies like that. Like, it's just like an hour and a half long. It's fairly simple. It's got a bit of that Coen Brothers feel to it, sort of like a Fargo vibe to it. It's nothing that's going to be amazing, but I thought it was a solid movie. Certainly worth the hour 25 minutes it was to do. And I liked sort of seeing that little collection of actors. Also, I can't remember. There's another guy in it who played a judge. He's a really funny actor. I can't remember his name. I know you know him. You know TV actors better than I do anyway. I can't even think of his TV roles, unfortunately. But he's a funny guy. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's really funny. He plays a judge in it. Yeah.
I think my favorite River Phoenix movie would be Running on Empty.
I don't even remember, to tell you the truth.
That's the one with Martha Plimpton. She's in it as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that one. Directed by Sidney Lumet. Yeah. It's coming back to me. I should rewatch that one too, because I'm pretty vague on it. And I really want to see that cut of Dark Blood. The movie that like didn't get finished because he died.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because they made a cut of it in 2012 where they fill in some stuff just to let you know what happened. Like, it's not complete or anything. I think some of it might even just be text, for God's sakes. But it's just in an effort to tell the full story.
Like post-apocalyptic type movie?
I don't remember exactly how. Yeah, something to do. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's just there's radiation because there's been radiation tests.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like a couple played by Judy Davis and Jonathan Pryce. And he like winds up at their house, and his wife, he had a wife, and she died from the radiation from it and stuff. And they like take him in because they feel sorry for him or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it never got finished. But in 2012, they like added in some stuff. I can't remember exactly how it worked. And I guess what was interesting about it too was like the whole thing was like they kind of find out like he's kind of screwed up. Like it's kind of like a villain role, which I hadn't really seen him do. So I'd really be interested in seeing it and stuff. That he like winds up like taking them prisoner or something. I don't know. For the 2012 release, roughly 4 to 6 missing scenes were replaced with somebody just providing narration. So that's basically all it is.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, just to see it, because I haven't seen any of it, right? So, but yeah, that's he died during production, so they didn't finish it.
He died of a drug overdose, right?
Yeah, He died of a drug overdose on was it like Halloween night?
You know, it's the weirdest.
He'd been out. He was at the Viper Room, which at the time was owned by Johnny Depp, and he was with Joaquin. Joaquin was with him when he died. You can listen to. I think it's in that thing we watched.
Yeah.
Where Joaquin calls 911. You know, it's awful. Joaquin's telling him what's going on and crying. He wasn't Joaquin then. He was Leaf, but same difference.
I think Leaf is better.
Yeah, he just did it because he wanted to separate himself from the family because they all did his names, right? River, River, Summer, Rain, Leaf. He wanted to differentiate himself, which I guess I sort of understand.
Change your last name too, buddy.
Well, yeah.
What was he? Leaf was in some stuff as Leaf.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the whole family, all of them, even the lesser ones, were in stuff when they were kids.
Oh, he was in that the movie with Martha Plimpton and Keanu Reeves, Parenthood. He played Martha Plimpton's sister or a brother.
I don't think I've seen any of his early stuff.
As Leaf.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of that. Like, what's the oldest movie by? I think the oldest movie I've seen him in is 8mm, and I don't even remember that. Because he was in various things in the 90s as Leaf, like you said. Yeah, his first 4 roles, he was credited as Leaf. That would be Kids Don't Tell, Space Camp, Riskies, and Parenthood. They're all Leaf, credited as Leaf. Phoenix.
Yeah, I love Parenthood. I watch it all the time. It's odd, drama role for Rick Moranis and Steve Martin.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a fan of Steve Martin.
Well, it's got some comedic elements in there, but for the most part, a drama.
Yeah. Steve Martin's a lot like Bill Murray, kind of arrogant, thinks highly of himself, and I guess rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But it doesn't really matter to me.
I hadn't heard that before.
About Steve Martin?
Yeah.
Not to the extent of, say, Bill Murray, but I mean, Steve Martin obviously did have some issues. Remember that he made that whole movie just because he was mad at somebody?
Which one?
Hold on, it'll come to me.
House Guest. I'll name his movies if you want me to.
Steve Martin's in House Guest? Oh yeah, of course he is. No.
Him and Goldie Hawn, right?
Oh, I'm getting so confused. I thought House Guest was Phil Hartman and...
Oh, that's... Oh, shit. Maybe you're
Phil
right.
Hartman and that black comedian...
Yeah, Sinbad.
Sinbad. Isn't that House Guest?
You're right. What am I thinking of?
Oh, you're right. He's in some... well, yeah, he's been in awful movies since the 2000s. But,
I got to figure out what movie. House something.
Yeah, I'll find it. I finally found his filmography here. He was in Big Mama. Maybe you're thinking Big Mama's House. He was in Big Mama.
No.
Because that's the one... Oh, never mind. That's Baby Mama, not Big Mama. I'm getting all mixed up here. Yeah, sorry. I'm Bringing Down the House. That's what you're thinking of.
No.
With Queen Latifah.
That's not the one I'm thinking of, though.
Oh. Then I don't know. But anyway, the one he made because he was mad, I believe, was Bowfinger. Not Bowfinger. Hold on. I can't find anything in here.
My Blue Heaven. Leap of Faith.
Novocaine?
Oh, really? I love that movie.
Yeah, I like Novocaine too. Is that the one though? There's someone he made to just spite some woman because he was mad at her because the relationship went bad, and it was around that period. And now I can't think. It might have been Novocaine, unless I'm mixing him up with somebody else. But I didn't think so. Anyway, I always like Steve Martin because I think he's really talented because he's a good writer too. He can do a lot of things besides act too. He's a good writer. I don't care about the banjo, but he can play banjo really well, obviously.
Oh yeah.
A few years ago, my second stint at university, before I wound up quitting altogether, so I didn't finish the course. I was in a course called I don't know, something. It was about creativity, was the whole point of the course. So, you know, I was really interested in it. So I didn't finish. And like, our professor like opened it by like talking about Steve Martin. Like first they showed him doing that King Tut's sketch from SNL, which hasn't aged well.
No.
Yeah. Even like 6 or 7 years ago when I was watching with like, you know, university students who were younger than me, I knew like no one's going to laugh at this. They're all just going to be like, what? You know?
No,
he's like,
old SNL does not age well though.
No. Very little of the 70s stuff.
Look at all the Jim Belushi. I mean, not Jim Belushi. John Belushi, like slicing up watermelons and shit. It's not funny. Or cheeseburger Pepsi, all that stuff is not funny.
No, there's a lot of the 70s stuff. It took to about the early 80s before they got stuff that would actually, you know, endure and you could still say is funny, I'd say.
But
like, you know, there's some stuff, obviously. I'm not going to throw it all away, but yeah, a vast majority of that 70s stuff, you're just like, yeah, okay.
But I mean, you know, comedy's relative, so it's just kind of the nature of it sometimes.
Yeah. You know, Shop Girl's a good movie. He wrote that, and I think possibly directed it. Yeah, he wrote a novella called Shop Girl, and then the screenplay is based on it. That was a movie that had Claire Danes. That's only 2004, and that already... I feel like an asshole because I bring this up every time. Like, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to say, in the 90s, I had a huge crush on Claire Danes, and I loved her. Then suddenly in the early 2000s, something about her changed. The way she looked, she didn't look like herself to me anymore. And I don't just put it down to age. It's just something changed. And I just stopped finding her attractive. And I don't know what it is. And it doesn't matter. It's no big deal. You know, oh, so you're not into her anymore. Who cares? You know, whatever. She's still a good actress, everything like that. It's just weird, though, because she was one of my big crushes. And a lot of them, like I said, even when they got older, I still really, really liked them, like Samantha Math or something like that. Claire Danes, she doesn't look the same. Doesn't matter. Just anyway.
I never found Claire Danes particularly attractive. I mean, she's not ugly by any means, but
well, I mean, she was never, even at her most attractive, she wasn't like that. She was not like bombshell type thing. But I mean, I mean, everybody has their quirks and things. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people you found, whether they're famous or not, that are quite attractive that are attractive in like the more classical sense or mainstream sense. You know. Stuff like that. Hell, there's girls that I've sort of found unattractive, which has made them seem attractive to me. Like Ashley Simpson. Like, she's unattractive, but in an attractive way, or at least she was when she was relevant. I don't know what she looks like now, but because you know what I mean? Like her sister, obviously, Jessica Simpson, classical attractive, you know, she's an idiot.
I'm not
an idiot, but you know.
That's
But I always thought when Ashley came out, she was pretty cute and kind of like because of her flaws. Like there's something, I don't know.
We talking pre or post nose job here?
I guess it would be pre, because she was the one that got upset with it, right? Same thing with Jennifer Grey. Just like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Now I'll change it. Now I'll change what makes me memorable.
Yeah, Jennifer Grey still says like that was the big mistake.
Oh yeah, I mean, she seemed to disappear as soon as she did it.
Instead of being like, oh shit, that's Jennifer Grey, you're like, oh, okay, there's a woman over there.
Yeah. There's some average-looking woman.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, Renee Zellweger is a good example. She...
I found her attractive in her first movie ever, and that was it. I like her in Empire Records. After that, I can't stand the look of her.
Man, look at Love in a 45, if you ever get a chance.
Never
you may not want to watch it. You may just want to screenshot it.
What year is that?
96, I think.
Oh, yeah. You look really different?
No, I mean, not different. Just I thought she was really attractive in that film.
Oh yeah, like I said, Empire Records is 95, so she probably looks comparatively the same.
But you know, I mean, she has the squinty eyes, and that's what made her who she is.
And now she doesn't have it.
And her eyes are, you know, wide, and she doesn't look like herself, so she's not going to get any work.
The one that everybody hates is what Meg Ryan did. Meg Ryan makes everybody. Meg Ryan just makes everybody so sad.
Oh man, it is sad.
See, Meg Ryan was somebody I was never into, so I don't care. Like, she was America's sweetheart. Like, I could never find her attractive.
She was like the girl next door type look.
I guess.
Not you know, classically, you know, bombshell. You know, like you were saying.
Yeah, I know. Like I said. So again, it's not like I found her ugly, but I never found her appealing.
And like, you know, Michelle Pfeiffer did the same thing. Laura. Oh fuck. She was on Twin Peaks. Oh fuck. My brain is garbage today.
Wait, somebody from Twin Peaks?
Yeah.
I just watched a movie with somebody from Twin Peaks.
Laura Flynn Boyle. That's who I was trying to think of.
Right.
She's ruined her face.
I don't really remember her. I've seen her in a bunch of things, but I couldn't tell you any of them. Like, I know she's been around and been in things, but she's not memorable to me. But I just saw a movie with Madgekin, whatever her name is, right around the time she was in Twin Peaks. I saw the Stephen King movie, Sleepwalkers.
Oh yeah, what'd you think of that?
I like the I think I like the concept. Like, it's a good setup, and then it's kind of pretty stupid, and the effects are god awful. And I'm not just picking on the effects, because it's not just that. Because honestly, the way the monsters and stuff look, this issue, although yes, the effects are shitty. It's go all the way back to the concept art. I have problems with that. I have problems with that what they drew on the initial sketches. Like, I don't like that either.
I agree.
But I mean, it's funny. He just wrote it as a screenplay. Like, there's no book or short story. Yeah. But I think a story would have been better, because then I could just picture it the way I want. I'd say like the first 20 minutes are pretty good, and then it just evolves into campy crappiness. But I like the concept. I like these energy type vampires that can do things. I like that. Sure. But anyway, that had Madgekin, whatever her name was, and it was like 92 or 93. So she looks exactly the same as she did when she was on Twin Peaks initially.
Well, she's in the new Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
She's had some work done too, unfortunately, but I don't know. She's not as bad off as some of the other people are. Like Audrey from Twin Peaks. What's her name?
Yeah, I know who you mean. Anyway, I know who you mean.
Sherilyn Fenn.
Yeah.
She is finally in the show, and she doesn't look like she's had anything done. But man, she was in. I watched. Hold on.
What's driving me nuts is that I'm still trying to figure out what movie I'm trying to think of. I thought for sure it was Steve Martin, that somebody had made this movie. It would have been around the late 90s. And it was basically just like them sort of classlessly making fun of this actress that they'd been involved in. I was sure it was Steve Martin, but now it's just a big hole, because it's not Novocaine. It's not Bowfinger. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a different actor altogether, and I'm just blanking for some reason. I thought for sure it was.
I watched The Wraith again recently. Have you ever seen that one?
No. Who's in that?
Sherilyn Fenn and Charlie Sheen.
No, I've never seen that one.
She's, I don't know. You ever see women that like you think they're really attractive but they look better with their clothes on?
I guess I don't get to see enough women naked. I mean, I do in a way, but not like famous ones.
No, I'm just saying, like, oh man, she's super hot, but then she's not really. It's kind of like it was better, like, not being able to see that. Like, what you had imagined is kind of
I'm sure that's happened.
I mean, I don't necessarily mean naked. Like, she's in a bikini for, like, a large percentage of the movie. I don't know.
Yeah. It's fun. What I've never really gotten is everybody acts like, and it's true to a certain extent, like how breast-centric like our society can be and stuff. But it comes right down to it. Often when I think of like these A-list actresses and stuff like that, very few of them are known for like having great breasts.
That's true.
And that's not I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying everybody acts like, oh, you need to have big tits and stuff, or really great and stuff. I'm just thinking whenever you're making these lists or talking about people who are really beautiful, like I can't really think of too many. It's like where you really talk about their breasts. Like Janet Jackson was one.
Yeah.
I thought of her breasts right off, way before anything nipple stuff or anything like that. Way before any of that, before that became a punchline.
Yeah.
When I think of Janet Jackson in the 90s, or I would think, wow, she has like a really great rack, or really great set. But that's not usually what you would think about most of these actresses or something like that. It wasn't like an issue. I'm not saying it should have been. I'm just saying people. It just seems like kind of a. not a myth exactly, but people talk about how important breasts are and how everybody centers on it. I suppose that's true, but it's not like we haven't seen plenty of women who are being judged by their looks, whether fairly or unfairly, and their breasts are really, you know, we'll just say okay or average. You know, it's not like that was make or break for them. I mean, it's true though. You do find out a lot of actresses had their breasts enhanced and stuff that you didn't actually know about at the time. You're like, oh, I didn't even know. So
yeah.
Like I never noticed that like that Kaylee Cuckoo who was on the the Big Bang Theory. It never would have occurred to me that she never had her breasts done, but she did years like before that show.
Yeah, see,
because I mean I get it though. I guess maybe with my stupid caveman guy thing, I think if she got her breasts done, she must have gotten them huge.
Right,
like,
right.
So I think it's like, well, they're not huge, so why would she even bother? You know,
that's the way you do it though. That's the way you pull it off.
Yeah, like Pamela Lee. I mean, she was the poster child.
Well, like Linnea Quigley, you familiar with her from?
Yeah, sure. She was the Scream Queen person that was in all the things.
Savage Streets, you know.
She danced naked in Return of the Living Dead. Yeah, she's quite very small breasted. Yes.
Yeah, no breasts at all in Savage Streets. And then she gets her breasts done, and she gets they get larger and larger throughout the 80s, I guess. But I mean, by the time of the end of the thing, she just looks like I don't know, some sort of a figurine or something. But yeah, they're like in the middle phase in Return of the Living Dead.
Ah, okay.
That was like
I didn't realize she kept going.
Phase 1.
Phase 1.
And, Texas Chainsaw Hookers. She has. I think that's a good size for her because she's a small lady, you know. And
yeah,
I guess it's
get to a point where it just starts to look cartoonish.
It's like something. I mean, you're a small lady and you want to go with like triple Fs or some shit, whatever they're called. Yeah.
I mean, that just happens to some people too. And like, it's not even, I went to high school with a girl who was, maybe 4'10", 4'11", and even high school, enormous breasts and stuff like that. And I mean, it must have been difficult for her.
Well, she sounds hot.
She was cute enough, but I just, but that's what people are going to remember about her, right? That she was very short and very stacked or whatever like that. And I just think it must have probably been like an issue, not just because of that, but also it probably was bad for her back and stuff like that. I mean, I'd go on forever about breasts. I always talk about and stuff. Like I always really felt sorry for Soleil Moon Frye, who played Punky Brewster. I felt really bad for her. Because she was in the position of like getting fired off her show because she became so developed. And I just think how it's funny, like we often, and I'm not trying to make any comparisons or anything like that, but the story we often hear about girls, going through puberty, a lot of the girls who don't develop, being upset and feeling sad that, boys don't look at them and stuff like that. And people are focusing on large breasts, but the other side of the equation is not really good either. And especially if that's where all the attention comes from. I just really feel bad in the sense of somebody like Soleil Moon Frye or somebody like that, because you take a girl who's like, 12, 13, but her breasts are like really noticeably large. It's almost like offensive to people because it's taking something that they think is really adult or even pornographic and putting it on a child. So then you'll have like, so then, okay, she's walking around. So she'll have, the usual men that don't care and they'll just leer at her. It doesn't matter to him how young she is. They'll leer at her. But then you have the men that are, they're upright and they're moral and they certainly would never look at a child. But they look at her and they're kind of like mad at her because it's like, you're making me think, the wrong thing. Like it's obscene that you, who I view as a child, have this and are giving me these thoughts. And women could view her the same way too, almost like, like it's obscene, like as if she had anything to do with it. Like it wasn't her idea. It's just how it happened. And it literally cost her job. And that was why, because it's just like, we can't have Punky Brewster with enormous breasts because like people are just going to be put off by it because it's going to send all the wrong messages and make them feel weird. And, that's not her fault. It's just what the fuck happened. So, I really feel a lot of sympathy for women and girls that had developed really early, especially in an early noticeable way, because it just puts them in this position they never asked for. And suddenly there's something pornographic and obscene about them, which is not fair. I mean, it's just how things happened. And yet people have to view them a certain way. And I think that must be really tough. I assume that's what that actress on Modern Family went through. She got her breasts reduced.
Oh, really?
Her name is, what is it, Ariel Winter or something like that?
She got her breasts reduced, really?
Not by a lot. They were already really big, I guess. I don't know. But that was the thing, right? I never watched the show. I had no idea she was, but she was some teenager, and she was well underage when it started. You know, she wasn't legal, so it was, you know, you could say it was societally wrong or creepy to talk about her breasts, but people could not help it because they were so whatever. But anyway, yeah,
Wow.
a year or two, she got them done. Yeah. You do a Google image for her, you will be impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to tread lightly on this.
Yeah. I just mean, I do feel some sympathy for girls, whether they're actresses or not. It's worse when you're an actress in a way, for public eye, because like it's not all the benefits you think come from it, because you just get people viewing you this way that's really not your fault.
Yeah, I better.
Nature did what nature did. It wasn't her idea. It's just how it happened, and yet people like look at her as if she's something dirty, and it's really unfortunate. And I feel bad for actresses or just any girls in general that are in that position, because it's just how things happened. It wasn't their idea.
Sure. Well, I mean, comparatively speaking, it doesn't happen that often that you have a relatively skinny woman with extremely natural large breasts.
And yet that's that's the ideal we strive for, right? Like that's what we want. That's what we want.
Right. Which is why it's rare, because most women like that have gotten their breasts done. But you see a lot of fat girls with huge breasts, but
I've probably told this story before on the Sausage Factory because it's pretty funny. But for the sake of those that hadn't heard it, it is kind of funny. So one time when I was probably like, I was out of high school, because I was probably in my early 20s, maybe 21, 22, and I wasn't here. I was back in my hometown spending some time. This was back when Ryan still lived there, and Ryan had a group of friends that some of them were friends from earlier, and some of them were friends he'd made from school there. And one of them included this guy named Kent, who I'd never known before that, but he became part of our group and stuff. And Kent was kind of a ladies' man. He dated a lot of girls, whatever, I guess. Anyway, he's married now, so water under the bridge, I suppose. But, Kent was sort of the player, and, he sort of had a reputation that he dated a lot of girls, and a lot of hot girls, too. Oh, yeah, But anyway, so one time we were driving in somebody's car, going somewhere to do some just normal, innocuous thing, maybe go to the movies or something like that, or go to somebody's house. And we were talking about fears and things that people were afraid of. And we were just each bringing up things they were afraid of. And I mentioned how, like, I kind of have a fear of the ocean at night. Like a vast body of water is okay to me, sort of, but at night it becomes very sinister. And the idea of being out on a boat and seeing all the water, like I would take, like going on the ferry to Newfoundland or something like that. I'd go out on the deck and look down just to scare the shit out of myself, just to think of all that scary, and if I fell off, I'd be screwed and stuff. Anyway, and I brought that up, and people brought up the various things. Kent hadn't said anything. And somebody in the car, I don't remember who, said, well, what about you, Kent? And Kent thought for a minute, and Kent said, I'm afraid of pancake nipples.
Oh, yeah.
And we said, what? And he said, well, you know how, like, if you're dating a girl who's, like, and he has to make it clear, she's really hot, like, now, like, she's hot, but maybe she, maybe, like, years ago, she used to be fat, and, like, like, her body's adjusted, but, like, that's the same. And we're like, what? Because none of us had thought of this at all, but that was, anyway, like, I just burst out laughing at that point. Like, he was really serious and tried to explain to us this phenomenon, but, like, it's cool. You're dating a hot girl, and she was fat, but that's okay because she's not now. But it turns out like the nipples didn't make the change or whatever. So
I don't think that's the case. I don't think it has to do with being fat.
Well, that was what he said. Anyway, I don't know.
It's so funny you bring that up. I was thinking about that just the other day. I was talking to another friend of mine. We called them salami nipples.
There you go. Yeah.
Or that's how I heard them referred to. It was a good friend of mine had a sister that was pretty hot. She was, a few years older than us. And I remember I met up with some of her friends, and they were telling me that, one of the guys had been with her before. He was like, yeah, she's really hot, but she's got salami nipples. And I was like, whoa, what is that? So, he had to describe to me what salami nipples were. So I was just thinking about that the other day. I was talking to another friend of mine about it.
Well, that was Kent's fear. Well, I guess that's Kent's theory anyway. Maybe he thinks that's the only way. Because, yeah, I know that can occur naturally anyway. You don't even have to be necessarily overweight for that to be. But
the thing is, like that's, well, I guess when it gets I don't know. They get smaller at some points.
There you go. Anyway, I'm never gonna figure it. Yeah. Who would have thought?
During this movie,
we balanced it out sufficiently. If people were like worried about too much talk about gay stuff, we've heteroed it up nicely with some long, serious discussion about breasts. Not just breasts, but breast development and breast place in society. You know, we take this shit seriously. We give this a lot of thought. You know,
we've done our best to offend pretty much everyone.
Yeah, but at least it's well thought out.
Well, I was going to ask you what you thought of The Last of Us, but you can go ahead and get off of here if you want. I
do love The Last of Us. Yeah, I just started replaying that. That was when I got my PlayStation 4. That was the bundle I got with the remastered PS4 edition of The Last of Us. So this is not my. Oh yeah, so it's not my first time through. But honestly, like of anything that involves infected or zombies, it's not my favorite thing. But it probably has like the best overall story. It's a great story, really well done, and you know, just a land. I think it's the most officially acclaimed game of all time. It's received like over 200 awards. Like nothing, and you get it. Like it's a game changer, the way it works and stuff. And I just think like it's a whole other level of drama and realism and storytelling. Really great. See, that's why I play games. That's I mean, I like games that are, like Mega Man and stuff like that, and so I play those too. But, when I talk to Orc, and Orc always wants to get me into playing stuff online and stuff. See, I'm not like Orc. I don't want to beat people. I don't want to compete with people. I don't want to team up with people. I don't really care about people. I want an emotional experience, mostly. And that's why I like a game like The Last of Us. That's, like, again, I'll play games that don't have that are just fun, shoot them up and running around and using skill. But the games that mean the most to me have an emotional component, and that's why I play them, So a game like The Last of Us is, it's important. There's others I like more, but I like it a lot. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's, I think because Ellen Page is in there is what makes it so good.
Except it's not really her, right? Yeah, I know. But that was the whole thing.
Totally her, man.
I know. And it totally fucks with me. And yeah, people are, and I know if anybody knows me well enough or has watched The Sausage Factory, they'll be like, well, that's why you're upset about the whole trailer for Flatliners, just because Ellen Page is in there, because everybody knows I have some sort of weird emotional thing with Ellen Page. It's true, I do.
Well,
so
if
yeah,
I see that, she may be the only reason I do go see that, because I like her quite a bit.
Yeah, she's like the main character in it. From what the previews suggest, she seems to be the main character. I didn't really recognize the rest of the cast, but I'm not great at that anyway.
I've seen everything she's ever done. I'm pretty sure, even down to like Trailer Park Boys.
Well, obviously, I saw her there. Oh, yeah? Did you see Love That Boy?
Love That Boy.
2003. It has a weird parallel with that Hard Candy movie she did. Because remember how Hard Candy's about how, like, she's, like, 14, she's punishing this guy for being a pedophile and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Well, Love That Boy is a story, and it just shows what a backwards society we have because of the way we view things. And it's about like an overachieving university student, a girl who's like 21, who over time winds up falling in love with like a 14-year-old boy. And they're just like, and they treat it like it's really cute and funny. And I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just saying if it was the other way around, it would just be a tale of shame and woe and how awful and perverted that guy is. Anyway, Ellen Page is too young then. Ellen Page plays a girl who's about 13 or 12, because she really was at the time, and she gets upset because she sort of has a crush on the boy, and she's mad at him because he's like falling in love with this older woman, and she's just like, what are you doing? And there's a scene where Ellen Page gets really like upset with him and yells at him about it, saying like how gross he is for being in love with an older woman or something like that. But anyway, the main thing I like about it besides that is because I'm sure Ellen Page is from Halifax where I live. That movie's shot here, and all the university scenes are shot at my University of Kings, like the library and stuff. That's all where I went to school. So, yeah. So if you want to see some of that, watch Love That Boy. Also, I think I said this before, and it was briefly, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but there's some really shitty, awful, unwatchable Lizzie Borden movie that has, what's her name? Big Eyes. Not the new Big Eyes, the old Big Eyes. Not Amanda Seyfried, the old one.
Yeah.
The Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah, I got you. Christina Ricci. So there's, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but for a while on Netflix, there's this horrible, crappy, unwatchable
Lizzie Borden movie with her as Lizzie Borden. But there's a scene in that movie early on where like where she's getting arrested or whatever, and they're taking her to the courthouse, and she gets out of this carriage, and the shot is right on the main building of King's. Like they're right in the courtyard of King's. Oh. Like it's a really tight shot, so you only see the building. You can't see the other stuff around because it's a campus with stuff around it. But so if you want a good look there, so
yeah, sure.
And that's where I went to school. So those are a couple things that show that. But
man, Christina Ricci, Cleo Duvall's in that. A decent cast.
Yeah, it's not a decent movie though, man. I made like 40 minutes in, and that's kind of a miracle. Really bad, really bad.
What's going on with Christina Ricci? Is she just like washed up now?
I think so. Like, what was the last credible thing she did?
Monster.
Wow, really? Then she's really good in that. I think she's better in that than what's her name than the other one, the main Charlize Theron. I really do. I think she does a better job of playing the real character than Charlize Theron does of playing the real character.
She was on this canceled show called Pan Am. It was a
like the last big movie she did. Oh, she's going to do the voice of Tara. They're doing another good, because it's funny. DC can't do live action, but DC does good animated adaptations of their comic stuff. They're going to adapt probably the most famous, and the only Teen Titans arc I own is the Judas Contract. Do you know that one?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it's from like the early 80s, back for the famous run of Teen Titans, the one that most people know, the one that Marv Wolfman did with George Perez and stuff. It was the one that like introduced like Raven and Cyborg and stuff like that. But anyway, though it's called the Judas Contract, and we'll do some spoilers here. It's about how they have this blonde girl named Tara, and that's a meaningful name because she has earth powers. She can like make rocks move around and cause earthquakes and stuff like that. She joins the team. And actually, her brother is like somebody who was a hero too, but he died. He's from some like fake Russian country they invented. I can't remember what it's called. His name was Geo something. I'm not a great DC authority, so other people are gonna be like, "That's Geo, whatever." But anyway, so anyway, she joins the team, and the whole idea is you find out that actually she's a spy. She's not. It's not a betrayal. She's never one of them to begin with. She was a spy. She was sent in by their main enemy, Deathstroke, and the whole thing is eventually. She basically uses her information because she now knows who they are, so that Deathstroke can attack them one at a time when they're vulnerable, like in their secret identities and stuff. And this is right at the time where Dick Grayson has just quit being Robin, and he hasn't become Nightwing yet. It's actually the first time he's Nightwing is in this arc. But anyway, what happens is he's the only one that gets away. All the others get captured, and he's going to give them over to this terrorist organization called the Hive. And in the end, they're all really heartbroken that Tara could have betrayed them, and they don't believe that, and they don't want to believe it. Like, Beast Boy had a huge crush on her and thinks, like, no, there's no way, like, this is real, like, she's being controlled. But the whole thing was not even a betrayal. She was never one of them to begin with. And the whole thing was, even though she had some moments where she kind of liked them, she's kind of a bit of a sociopath and stuff, and they show how evil she is because she smokes. That means she's evil. And she's only and of course, you've got Deathstroke sleeping with her, and she's only 16, right? So it's like, oh man, oh, she's so bad, But anyway, so it's a really memorable thing. Anyway, they're going to do an animated version of that, and Christina Ricci is going to voice Tara, so that'll be cool. They did like a weird, loose, shitty adaptation of it in that weird Teen Titans show. Remember that weird Teen Titans show they did that was like a fake anime? Man, that was weird. That has a huge following too.
Yeah, a lot of those Teen Titans do.
No, it's too kidsy for me. Like, I liked some of it, but it was weird. It was too kidsy. It was full of jokes and stuff, and And then they made like a spin-off of that called Go, called just Teen Titans Go, where it's just little shorts that has nothing to do with anything. It's just little shorts, little comedic shorts based on the original. But there's just a huge audience for it. Like, there's a massive amount of fans of that show. And I'm not saying it was exactly a bad show. I just didn't like the tone. And they were never out of uniform in that show. Even like when they went out in public and hung out, like there's things where they go to a club and dance. They're all still in uniform. Like even Robin. Robin never takes his mask off in the show. Ever. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that's the whole thing. But anyway, so that's cool that Christina Ricci is going to do that. Because, yeah, like the last big thing she did was a failure, which was Speed Racer in 2008.
Yeah, that's a... Have you seen that? I mean,
she probably made some money from the Smurfs, too. Yeah, I like some things about it. I mean, it looks really cool. It's way too long. Like, I don't know why it has to be like that long. It's Speed Racer, for God's sakes.
Why do the Wachowski peoples have to do that? Why do they make everything so long?
I don't know. I mean, I understand why it was them doing it, because they already sort of had some anime sensibilities, as we discussed. It made sense on that point. And visually, it's a very impressive movie. But yeah, there's no reason for it to be that long. And
it's Speed Racer, for God's sake.
Yeah. And they were just like, let's make it this stunning epic. And it was that brief period in the mid-2000s where it was like, Matthew Fox, he could be a movie star. Well, no, he can't, but...
You've seen Party of Five, right? Okay, there's our movie star.
Yeah. Well, I figured it was Lost that really put him on the map, though, right? Yeah, people just love Lost, which I never watched, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Christina Ricci.
I picked up some of those Teen Titan comics to read to the kids.
The ones based on the show?
I guess they are based on the show.
The show has a very specific look, so you would know.
Yeah, trying to find the cover.
I mean, yeah, they're good for kids. They're fairly slapstick. It's just what I don't like about them. Like, in some ways, they try to... And what's really weird is, like, Deathstroke is the main bad guy in the show, but they can't... I don't even think they can use that name. It's too strong. So, you know, his name is Slade Wilson. His real name is Slade Wilson. On the show, he's just known as, like, Madonna. He's like Slade. They call him Slade. I'm like, you can't call him Deathstroke? Like, what the hell, man?
These kids are like looking at like hardcore scat porn on their phones, and then they won't let them like say these words on the comics.
Oh man!
Seriously.
Oh, I believe it. Oh, we better wrap up.
It's been a fun one, guys.
It's been a fun one. So I hope you guys enjoyed the extracurriculars as always. But you know, I don't feel like we're repeating ourselves just because we did another Gus Van Sant movie or another movie, like we said, from that era. You know, there's a lot of things that make it stand out. And we both like Van Sant, so it's highly possible we even do another one of his films, because I think he is one of the better filmmakers of the last 30 years. He's always done something that was, even the ones I don't like that much, they're worth talking about. I think they're interesting. They're not, you know, just derivative or predictable and stuff for the most part. So, you know, I'd say in the future we could probably do another one of his sometime.
Sure.
The Shakespeare stuff works for me. Like you said, it gives it sort of a neat, sort of charming tone that I think helps, because it deals with some sort of, you know, kind of downer subject matter. And really, yeah, if you want to see like why people blather on about River Phoenix being such a good actor or talent and such, this is a great example of that, because as we said, it's a different sort of role, particularly at the time in around 91. You said he was sort of, he was doing solid stuff all around anyway, but he could have just sort of gone like, you know, the easy sort of roles, like, you know, for the cute boy to do. Like, as you said, he was in all those magazines, he's a heartthrob and all that. So doors were open for him anyway. He didn't have to do this. So he, you know, he obviously saw something in it he liked, just the way Keanu's smarter, apparently, agent did in this. And it, you know, turned out really well for the both of them. And even though the movie didn't do spectacularly well at the time, it was a low-budget movie anyway. It was like $2.5 million, and it made back a good return of like 6-something million. Anyway, you know, it wasn't going to break box office records and make a big deal. His death in '93 is what made the movie become more prevalent suddenly, and it's had a pretty much steady cult following ever since. I think it's deserving of that, because it's a solid movie anyway. Even if you take away the mystique of River Phoenix, it's a solid movie that can stand on its own. It's an interesting story that's, like we said, not just like a simple arc where, you know, this beat happens, that beat happens. And even though it's you could use the word unfocused, I don't use that in a bad way. It's unfocused, but unfocused in a way that still is coherent and still feels like a story. I feel like the unfocused stuff is sort of deliberate to help us identify with his character Mike, because as we said about like how he feels about his place in the world and being a narcoleptic and the way he just sort of drifts around, I think it all really works really well. So yeah, a big fan of this film. I was happy to see it again. I'm glad we got to talk about it for sure.
Absolutely.
And even though we did our full spoilers as usual, I would still recommend seeing the film if you get the chance, because it's definitely interesting. If you've seen some of Gus Van Sant's later work, you can see some of the stuff that it was probably tried out in here. As I said, stuff like there's stuff in Elephant that I directly think comes from this movie, and probably a few others too that I really enjoy. So from that perspective, it's worth seeing too, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to see. What was another movie I wanted to recommend of his that you probably haven't seen?
Gus Van Sant or River Phoenix?
Yeah, you Gus Van Sant. But you've seen Running on Empty before, right?
Oh.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Okay, definitely check that one out. But it was Paranoid Park from 2007.
Trying to remember that one. Yeah, I was a bit let down by that one.
Were you? Okay.
It's another one in Portland. I mean, I didn't think it was bad. I think I just thought it was going to be more kind of a thriller than it was. I mean, it still is a thriller. I mean, it has kind of that setup. I don't know. I guess I was expecting something to be a little edgier or something. Well, it's hard to say exactly. It's been a while.
I didn't have any expectations when I saw it, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, part of the problem was I had sort of expectations. Something, I don't know if it was previews or something I'd read about it. It sort of led me to believe it was something it wasn't, and maybe, yeah, like I said, set it up to be something it wasn't. I don't know if we should do Jerry. That's got to be like his most divisive movie.
Yeah. I've seen it. Let me see if I can go remember which one it is.
It's the one, the wandering around in the desert one.
Oh no, I don't like Jerry.
Yeah, so I mean,
I don't like that one.
It's an awfully strange movie.
No, I don't like that one.
Just wandering around. So there's the Casey Affleck connection, but yeah.
The, Last Days, I think is pretty good.
Haven't seen that either. That's the one before Jerry, or after? No, sorry, before Paranoid Park. Yeah.
Finding Forrester is like a pretty big.
I like it. It's essentially Good Will Hunting again, with like, except about writing.
You're the man now, dog.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, that's how history will remember it, of course.
Yeah, but I mean that's what it's known for now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a good enough movie, but as I said, I think it's a little too close to Good Will Hunting. It's kind of like a similar idea, except like, oh, we'll do it with writing instead of like mathematics and stuff. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm a writer. I like movies that talk about writing and stuff like that, but he's not the kind of writer I like. Like, he doesn't write anything I think is any good. It's not the kind of thing that interests me. He just seems to write like boring essays, as far as I can tell. And that whole scene where like he and the prof are like firing off quotes at each other. I don't know. I thought it was really irritating.
It's not really the type of film that I would normally like, but it's okay. You know,
it's okay.
More of a studio picture.
Yeah. See, that's that unlike this film that really follows an arc. Where you can kind of guess how things are going to go and stuff. I think, which isn't always a bad thing. It certainly isn't. It's just I don't know. I'd definitely say one of his less interesting movies. Milk is really good.
I haven't seen Milk. I need to watch that one.
I'm not one of those people that is a huge fan that thinks that Sean Penn is this great actor, but he's quite good in this role.
But Van Sant did he did Good Will Hunting and probably got on the map. I would imagine with quite a few people, and then he did the Psycho remake, which is not a good movie.
No,
because it's a shot for shot remake. But and then he does Finding Forrester, and then he kind of just falls off for a few years until he does Elephant, which is one of my favorite films of his.
I really like it.
Maybe we could do Elephant at some point.
Yeah.
I'd love to watch that one again.
I'd like to see Even Kilgore's got the glues again.
That's a good
because, I didn't, when I saw it the first time, I hadn't read the book, but I've read the book since, and I can't remember. I'd like to see how it compares. I always thought Tom Robbins was sort of an odd writer. It's weird. My friend Shane, who I've sometimes mentioned and stuff, and he was into writing and stuff like me and stuff. I would say, like, I don't know if it still is, but years ago when I met him, Tom Robbins was his favorite author, which I always thought was odd. And I'm the last person to like say like, who you are or whatever should dictate that. But everything about Tom Robbins' writings, suggests to me that like he writes kind of almost for women. But I'm not saying, oh, if you're a guy, you shouldn't like his stuff. I don't mean that at all. But I just always found it surprising, and his stuff is good. He's got a really weird one that I really like. His stuff is all really offbeat. But oh yeah, Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas is one that I really like, that he wrote in the early 90s that I really enjoy. But even Cowgirls Got the Blues, I didn't even know. Like, the movie's from the early 90s, but he wrote the book way back in the 70s, 76.
Oh, wow.
And but anyway, like, yeah, most of his movie stuff, I'm not just saying because it's, and I'm not even, I don't mean because his characters are girls a lot of the time, or female, because a lot of my characters are female. It's hard to explain, but he always suggested to me, like, his stuff, it seemed like he was writing like with an intended target audience of women. But anyway, I don't mean to limit people that way, but yeah, I'd like to see that movie again, because it seems like a weird thing to make. Like, anything he wrote seems like a really weird thing to even try to make a movie about. Like, even Cowgirls Get the Girl Blues is probably even stranger than I remember, because it's a really weird concept to try to make into a movie.
I need to read that. I haven't read the book.
Yeah, I've only read those two by him. I've read Skinny Legs and All, which is a collection of like shorter stuff. It's not a novel, I don't think.
Well,
and
like, when you write, do you have a target audience in mind when you write, or?
In a way. I mean, nowadays things have become so broken up into like sections and stuff that it's almost impossible not to. Because like a lot of the stuff that I write, I figure would probably be like a young adult, like, what, YA audience, probably. But I don't try to make it be that way, but I just sort of, sometimes it's because it makes things easier to pitch. Like, if you want somebody to actually publish your stuff, you need to tell them that. But
YA is like, everyone reads YA now,
I know, which is good, but it also has sort of a bad name too, because now it's kind of like what happened with the dark age of comic books. It's like things have gotten to a point where instead of it just being like, it's for young people, but it's intelligent and good. Now it's just sort of like, yeah, it's just, all schmaltzy and annoying for teenagers, You say YA to like some people and they're just like, oh, so it's just a bunch of teenage, bull crap. And I mean, that's fair for some of it. It's absolutely fair. And some of that's the most popular, and that's why, right? Like, Twilight or whatever. And that's the other thing. YA fantasy has just exploded. Except YA fantasy is always the same thing now. Like, YA fantasy could be anything, but what it means now is contemporary. It means right now, in this time, people in the world either crossing over into some other world or some weird element comes into our world. It's never about, like, set somewhere else. It's never about being like, yeah, it's always right now. It's like all that stuff. Or it's just some future society, but, the kids are pretty much the same and stuff, like Maze Runner or whatever.
Yeah.
Of like that wave, I think Maze Runner is like the least bad.
Oh, really?
Even though it's still predictable and terrible as hell. But I mean, and like the worst is obviously Twilight because it's so horribly written. But the worst, as far as like using all those like tropes that have been used over and over again, is probably Divergent. Because Divergent is confusing as fuck, and It is so full of weird terms. Oh, like, look up like the rules for what it means to be divergent, and then find out like what it means if you're like the exception to the rule. Like, it's so weird and confusing and dumb. Like, that's the main thing that like most of this YA fantasy that's like post-apocalyptic future or whatever stuff means now. It just means assigning terms and labels the thing. And the Maze Runner is hilarious because that's all the Maze Runner is. It's like, okay, it's like we live in the Grove or something. That is the maze. The things are called like stalkers. Those are the hunters. Like, everything is assigned like a specific name, and it's so dumb. But like I said, it's actually, of the ones I've seen in movie form, Maze Runner's, it's still quite bad, but like it's not as bad as the others. I could never watch Divergent. Like, even just reading like a little thing on the internet, like saying what it's about, will give you a headache telling you what Divergent is. My God.
They really churn those movies out too.
Yeah.
Because but Divergent, Insurgent, Insurrection.
So yeah, I think when I write, I do write with an audience in mind. Like, it's the same thing. I hope anybody who reads can enjoy it, but I think of how it could be marketed and stuff like that. Like, the main fantasy story, the closest thing I have to being published, again, would probably be YA. It's about a girl who's about 12 or 13. She's the main character, so right away that, you know, seems to suggest that, although, you know, just because something stars a kid doesn't mean it's for kids all the time. But
Sure.
But this particular one has a certain tone to it and stuff. You know, there's content I won't put in this. Like, it's not going to have swear words. It's not going to have over-the-top violence. I write stuff with those, but for this, no. So it is true. I do set up the barriers of where I'm going to put stuff, and I guess because target audience is in there. And I don't know if Tom Robbins did that on purpose. I think he just eventually found that was kind of his voice, that he was just good at it, that like he was good at writing stuff that like appealed to women, is just kind of how I think it is.
I'm just curious because it seems like having a target audience in mind would somehow infringe on your creative process. That's just, you know, something that occurred to me.
It can, like I said, it can in some ways, in other ways it doesn't. It's the same thing as like when you think about like movies or TV shows and they have to put something like on a network or something, and sometimes it forces them to be more creative, right? It's like, we can't show this or we can't talk about this, but we need some way to get it across. So it forces them to do something more creative and maybe more artistic. So sometimes I think of it in those terms because, yeah, like the thing I'm writing, like I said, where I wouldn't put anything that's too dark in there or too, you know, explicit. There are still some things in there that I want that are very seriously conveyed. I just want to come up with a different way of doing it than an R-rated way, I guess, which can be done. Like I said, as far as that goes, I'm really influenced by that stuff that's, you know, has kids in mind, but is quite dark. I always point to the Clive Barker story, The Thief of Always, some of the Neil Gaiman stuff, most notably Coraline. Like, I love the Wizard. The movie Return to Oz. Like those are like my main. Those are like my main guidelines. I want to write, like, that's what I'm writing right now for this anyway. That sort of thing, right? Like, none of that's rated R. Kids can watch it, but it's got some spooky stuff in there. It's got some serious stuff in. You know what I mean? And that's so that's what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to do with this thing about my Annie character. Her name's Annie. But yeah, I've written back in like 2010. I wrote a story called The Dark Staircase with Annie, and it's quite short. And on and off for years, I've been writing a sequel to it that's supposed to be longer, and I've made barely any progress on it. But because I was always thinking, you know, the first one is in that weird. It's in that weird length problem that makes it hard to publish, where it's like it's too long to be a short story, but too short to be a novel. So maybe it's a novella, but that's hard. It's hard to get people to want to like just sell that on its own, which is actually funny, which is just what I just read about, right, when I was reading different seasons. Like, that's why he made different seasons. Stephen King made different seasons the way he did, why he put 4 of them together, because he'd written at least 3 of them well beforehand, but he hadn't even tried to publish them because they were all too short. They were all, you know, between 30 and 40,000 words or something, which is, you know, kind of a no man's land. So that was the whole reason he pitched different seasons. The whole idea was, we'll call it different seasons because it's different, because it's shorter, because at that time he'd just done full novels, and we'll call it seasons and we'll give it a seasonal theme. Mm-hmm. And we'll put them together. And that was his idea, because he knew that pitching them on by themselves at the time was not workable. And that was way back then, and it's still kind of the case. Like, there is sort of a weird no man's land when it comes to length. So my thought was, don't even try to publish The Dark Staircase until you say for sure, hey, I've got a sequel for it too. You know, that's done, and it's longer. And if you want to put them together or whatever, you know, give them options. So that's what I've been telling myself. Anyway, I blabbed too much about that for an episode of this show. So sorry about that, guys. But anyway, we're glad you're still listening, but we should probably wrap up. We have some ideas for next week, but it's still a little vague, but we'll let you know, hopefully in the short term. So
hey guys, just stay tuned to the Twitter page
stay tuned for sure
for updates. We'll try to let you know a few days beforehand what we're doing.
Yeah. So that'll do for tonight, and thanks a lot for being with us, and we will see you in 1 week's time again on the Pocket Dimension. That's Jay. I'm Cole. Thanks a lot for being here, and we'll see you again real soon. Have a good day. See ya.
Thanks, guys.